Close your eyes and imagine this, a silent night, darker than any you've seen before. The kind of night where the stars look sharp enough to cut through the sky. The kind of night where the air itself feels still, as though the world is holding its breath. And then, imagine, high above that silence, something moves. Not a plane, not a satellite, not the gentle arc of a familiar comet, but something stranger, something unfamiliar, something that does not belong. It enters quietly, as if it had been waiting for exactly this moment to appear, sliding in from the endless black between the stars. For the first 10 seconds of this story, I want you to hold that image, a mysterious traveler crossing into our cosmic neighborhood, not by accident, but perhaps with purpose. That is the thought we carry tonight. You are listening to a story that is both real and dreamlike, a story rooted in astronomy but heavy with wonder, one that invites you not just to learn, but to drift, to sink deeper into the calm of the night as your imagination follows this visitor across the skies. This visitor has a name: 3-IAT-LAS. To most, it is just another interstellar object, a shard of rock drifting between the stars. But to others, it represents a question far older than science, a question we whispered into the night since the very first humans gazed upward. What if we are not alone, and what if the things that pass overhead are not accidents, but messages? The first time humanity faced a question like this in the modern age was with Oumuamua in 2017. A long, slender object, its motion unlike anything we'd ever tracked before. It tumbled strangely, reflected light in inconsistent ways, and accelerated ever so slightly, as if pushed by something more than gravity. Scientists argued. Some insisted it was just a fragment of rock. Others hesitated, admitting the possibility, no matter how small, that it might have been designed, that it might have been a probe, a messenger, a relic from an intelligence we do not know. Then came Comet Borisov in 2019, and it soothed us in a way. Borisov looked more familiar, more natural, with a glowing tail and a behavior we could explain. It was, at least to our eyes, a safe kind of strangeness. But the universe rarely lets us stay comfortable for long. And so, in 2025, we turned our eyes to the sky again and saw something new. 3-IAT-LAS. Another interstellar traveler. Another visitor from a place so far away, it's hard to comprehend. Think about that for a moment. Space is vast. The distances between stars are so large that light itself, the fastest thing we know, takes years, centuries, millennia, to cross them. And yet, here, moving against the quiet backdrop of constellations we've known since the dawn of civilization, is an object that began its journey in a different sun's embrace. It is like finding a seashell from a distant ocean, washed up unexpectedly on your shore. Out of place, out of time, and full of secrets. The discovery was exciting, yes, but also unsettling. Its trajectory was odd, its brightness unpredictable. It didn't behave exactly like the comets we catalog, nor exactly like the asteroids we study. It was, in between, mysterious, hard to pin down. Scientists wrote papers, ran simulations, tried to capture its story with equations. But the truth is, no matter how much data they gathered, the unease lingered. There is a difference between what science can say and what the imagination cannot let go of. And the imagination kept asking, what if? As you listen, I want you to breathe slowly. Let the rhythm of this story match the rhythm of your own body. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The world outside your window fades. The stress of the day recedes. And you are left with only this thought. What if 3I Atlas wasn't an accident? What if its journey across the stars, its arrival here and now, had meaning? It's a dangerous thought, perhaps, a thrilling one. And yet, it's a thought that has lived in humanity for millennia. The ancients looked at comets and believed they were signs from the gods, harbingers of change, warnings of war or the death of kings. The Aztecs, the Chinese, the Greeks, each culture wrapped celestial visitors in stories of power and destiny. Our ancestors didn't think of the sky as random. They thought of it as intentional. And maybe, deep down, we still do. Imagine lying in a quiet room, lights dimmed, your body resting as your mind drifts upward into the cosmos. You can picture Earth, glowing faintly with its blue aura, hanging like a jewel in the black velvet of space. And above it, this object 3-IAT-LAS moving steadily, silently, no engine noise, no beacon, no signal we can decipher, just its presence, an enigma wrapped in darkness. Is it merely a rock, or is it something more? The question doesn't need an answer tonight. It only needs to be asked. You see, science tells us that most objects are accidents. A planet forms from dust, pulled together by gravity. A comet is a frozen leftover from the solar system's birth. An asteroid is debris from collisions long ago. We are taught to see randomness, to accept chance. But chance is only one lens. Another lens asks, what if the timing is not coincidence? What if there is purpose hidden in the randomness? What if some of these visitors are not accidents, but choices? This doesn't mean we abandon science. No, science is our anchor, our way of navigating the universe. But imagination is the sail. And tonight, as we begin this story, we let that sail catch the wind. We let ourselves drift beyond certainty, into possibility. So let me take you back to the night of discovery. Astronomers scanning the skies, telescopes capturing faint specks of light, data flashing across monitors. At first, it looks like nothing. Just another dot. Another point among millions. But then, the calculations begin. Its path, its speed, its angle, and suddenly, the realization. This dot is not bound to our sun. It comes from elsewhere. The hairs on the back of the neck rise. The heart beats a little faster. The universe has whispered again. And this time, it says, pay attention. You and I, we are not there in that observatory, but we can feel it. We can step into their shoes, watching the night sky yield its secrets. And we can ask ourselves the same question. Why now? Why here? Why this? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a fragment, wandering for eons until it crossed our path. But maybe, just maybe, it is not nothing. Maybe, just maybe, it is something. And that is the doorway we step through tonight. A doorway into a mystery that is larger than us, older than us, and yet, strangely, here for us. So, lie back. Let the sound of my voice carry you. Imagine the stars overhead, the deep quiet of space, and a solitary traveler drifting among them. Its name is 3IATLAS. Its story is just beginning. And our question is simple. What if it wasn't an accident? But the story of 3I Atlas isn't just about the object itself. It's also about USA, about how we see, about how we wonder, about how we interpret the unknown. For every discovery, there is the thing discovered, and then there is the human response to it. That response is never neutral. It is always colored by our history, our imagination, our fears, and our hopes. When 3IATLAs first appeared in our data, it was not just numbers on a screen, it was a spark, a new chance to ask an old question. Are we truly alone in this universe, or are we part of a story much larger than ourselves? Think about how small Earth is when placed against the backdrop of the cosmos. Our planet is a speck, orbiting an average star, tucked away in the spiral arm of a galaxy that itself is only one among trillions. Yet from this small perch, we lift our eyes and dare to measure the heavens. We build telescopes to see deeper, instruments to detect the faintest signals. And in doing so, we place ourselves in a position to notice, to witness, to ask why. That is what happened with Oumuamua, with Borisov, and now, with 3I Atlas. The moment of realization. The instant scientists understood that this object was not from here, is almost cinematic if you picture it. Imagine the dark observatory, the hum of machines, the glow of monitors, data scrolling across a screen. At first, it's just another detection. Astronomers see countless of these, but then, calculations show its path, its speed, its approach, and in a flash, it becomes clear. This is not a child of our sun, it is not one of our familiar wanderers. This is a visitor. It has crossed the gulf between stars to arrive here. How many millions of years has it been drifting? How many silent eons has it moved, unseen, before slipping into our view? And yet, here it is. Now in our time, in our generation, that is what stirs something deep. The timing feels deliberate. Though rationally we may know it is just coincidence, emotionally it feels like a message. Why here? Why now? Why us? This is where the imagination takes over. Scientists keep their language cautious, careful, rooted in data. They speak of probabilities, models, confidence intervals. But in the silence between words, the imagination whispers louder. Could this be something more? Could it be a vessel, an artifact, a probe quietly observing? Could it be a seed, carrying potential from one star system to another? Or is it simply a cosmic orphan, drifting endlessly without purpose, without design, without meaning? I want you, as you listen, not to force an answer. Instead, let the question breathe. Let it fill the space around you the way the stars fill the night sky. Because the beauty of this mystery is not in solving it, but in experiencing it. We are not in a hurry here. We are resting with the unknown, the way you might rest beside a campfire, listening to the crackle, staring into the dark woods, wondering what lives beyond the shadows. And just as ancient storytellers sat beneath the stars and wove tales of gods, monsters, and heroes to explain what they saw, we too sit beneath the stars tonight, weaving our own story. Only this time, our gods are galaxies. Our monsters are the dark voids between them, and our heroes are the small, faint visitors like 3I Atlas that dare to cross the gulf. It is almost humbling, isn't it, to think that something could begin its journey in a system unimaginably far away, slingshot through space for eons, and then, for a brief moment, cross paths with Earth. For us, it feels monumental. For the universe, it may be nothing at all. And yet, in that fleeting crossing, meaning is born. This meaning is not fixed. For some, 3I Atlas is a scientific puzzle. For others, it is a reminder of our fragility, how small we are. For still others, it is a sign, a possibility, a whisper of intelligence beyond us. The object itself does not change. but our stories around it do. And those stories are powerful. They guide how we feel, how we dream, even how we sleep. So, as you let your body sink into comfort and your thoughts drift gently outward, imagine yourself watching that faint speck of light through a telescope. Imagine knowing that it is not one of us. Imagine feeling both wonder and unease. That is the heart of our journey tonight. Because in the end, whether 3IATLAS is accident or intention, natural or artificial, it doesn't only belong to scientists. It belongs to all of us. To everyone who has ever looked at the night sky and felt small, and yet connected to something vast. To everyone who has ever asked, quietly, what if? And tonight, under the canopy of imagination, we ask that question again. What if 3I, Atlas, wasn't an accident? What if its arrival has a meaning we are only beginning to sense? What if, after thousands of years of looking upward, humanity has finally been looked at in return? Hold that thought as gently as you would hold a flame in the dark. Do not rush it, do not demand it. Just let it glow, faintly, steadily, in the silence of the night. And now, as your breathing settles, and the rhythm of your body begins to mirror the rhythm of the words, let's linger on this thought a little longer. Imagine the path of 3I Atlas stretching backward through time. Long before humans lit their first fires. Long before Earth even looked the way it does now. Before the continents were where they are. Before life itself had fully emerged from the sea. Through all those ages, 3IATLAS was traveling. Silent, steady, unobserved. Picture it in your mind. A dark, elongated body, scarred with impacts, weathered by radiation, a survivor of unimaginable journeys. It drifts past stars that rise and fade. It glides through clouds of dust that never knew a human eye. It witnesses nothing, yet it exists as witnessed nonetheless. A quiet testament to the persistence of matter itself. And after such an unthinkably long odyssey, it meets us. A species that only recently began to notice the heavens with precision. A species still fragile, still arguing with itself, still finding its way. To us, the arrival feels like a story written for our generation. But to the object, it is simply motion. Yet both truths can exist at once. The indifferent reality of physics, and the rich emotional narrative we create around it. In this duality lies the mystery. The object may not care, but we do. We fill the silence with meaning, because that is what humans do best. We look at patterns, at coincidences, and we weave them into stories. And in the quiet moments, when the sky is clear and our minds are soft, those stories feel more real than the stars themselves. Let yourself imagine that first instant when data confirmed the trajectory. A chill down the spine of an astronomer. A whispered "no way" in a dimly lit control room. The kind of realization that makes the air itself feel different. For a few heartbeats, the entire world tilts. We are looking at something from out there, and out there suddenly feels close. Some of you may remember the first time you learned of Alma-Uma, or perhaps Borisov. The news spread quickly, splashed across headlines. There was speculation: alien probe, cosmic shard, a fragment of another world. Now, with 3IATLAS, the pattern repeats. But this time, the whispers are louder. We've been primed by the stories that came before. We are ready, almost expectant. The imagination leaps further. What if it is more than rock and ice? What if it is a message in disguise, a letter sealed in stone, drifting until someone astute read it? Or what if it is nothing more than dust, and the only meaning it carries is the meaning we place upon it? Both possibilities are humbling. Both remind us of our smallness and our longing for connection. And so, as you rest here, listening, you are not just hearing facts. You are participating in the oldest human act, the act of wonder, the act of turning the unknown into a mirror, so that in it we see ourselves. For every question about 3IATLAS is also a question about humanity. Who are we, that we even notice this fleeting visitor? What do we hope to find when we search the stars? And are we prepared, truly prepared, for what we might discover? Let the questions wash over you like waves. Don't hold them tightly, just let them pass, one after another, soothing in their endlessness. The unknown is vast, but so is the comfort of knowing we are asking together. Across the world tonight, countless others look up at the same sky, drawn by the same mystery. You are not alone in your wonder. You are part of a chorus, soft and unspoken, that hums beneath the stars. Imagine now that you are floating, weightless, above the earth. The planet glows faintly blue below you. The stars stretch endlessly above. And there, distant yet visible, drifts the shape of 3I Atlas, a reminder that the universe is not empty, it is moving. Alive, full of encounters waiting to happen. The visitor is silent, but your heart is not. It beats, steady, carrying the story forward. This is where our journey begins, not with answers, but with wonder. Not with certainty, but with possibility. Tonight, you are safe to wonder as wildly as you like. You are safe to imagine, to stretch your thoughts across light years, to let the boundary between dream and reality grow soft. Because in the softness lies the truth, that every mystery, no matter how far away, becomes part of us when we dare to think about it. And so, gently, we close the first circle of our story. 3-1, ATLAS has appeared. We have seen it. We have felt the tremor of recognition. It has stirred something ancient within USA's desire to seek, to know, to dream. This is not the end. It is only the beginning, the first step into a question that may take the rest of our lives to explore. For now, hold the image of that visitor in your mind. Dark, elongated, mysterious, drifting against the glow of the earth. Hold it like a lantern in the night. And as your body rests, as your mind softens, let the lantern guide you into the deeper story we are about to tell. The story of what it might mean if 3I Atlas was not an accident at all. The night sky is vast, eternal, and unyielding. Yet within its stillness, human eyes have learned to see movement, tiny traces of light that reveal entire worlds. It was in such a moment, quiet and unassuming, that astronomers first noticed something unusual. A point of light, faint and fleeting, not quite behaving as expected. At first, it might have seemed ordinary. The sky is full of such whispers, asteroids, comets, fragments of ice and rock, tracing their ancient paths. But this one resisted easy explanation. Its speed was strange, faster than a typical asteroid but not quite like a comet. Its trajectory didn't fit the neat, predictable ellipses that bind objects to the sun. Instead, it cut across the solar system like a traveler passing through a village, never slowing, never intending to stay. Imagine the tension in that moment. A few researchers staring at their monitors, leaning closer, adjusting their instruments. The data refreshed, line after line of numbers confirming what their instincts already told them. This object does not belong here. In the world of astronomy, discoveries often arrive quietly. There is no drumroll, no burst of light in the sky for everyone to see. Instead, the world changes in a room filled with tired eyes, coffee-stained papers, and the faint hum of equipment. Somewhere, someone leaned back in their chair, heart beating faster, realizing they had just glimpsed something from the deep unknown. We give it a name, 3I, ATLAS, the third confirmed interstellar object ever observed. The label itself is dry, clinical, almost cold, but the truth behind it is anything but. It means this: for the third time in human history, we have detected a traveler from beyond our star, an emissary from a realm we can only imagine. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. Out of the infinite dark, across distances we cannot traverse, an object has arrived, passing close enough for our fragile species to notice. What are the odds? What does it mean that, within such a short span of time, humanity has already witnessed 3 such visitors: Oumuamua, Borisov, and now 3I Atlas? Coincidence? Or is there a pattern unfolding, one we are only beginning to perceive? Consider the timing. Oumuamua appeared in 2017, shaking the scientific world with its elongated shape and its unexplained acceleration. Then came Borisov in 2019, behaving more like a classic comet but no less significant for its interstellar origin. Years passed, the world moved on, but those who studied the sky kept watching. And then, in our present moment, 3I ATLAS entered the scene, not a century later, not in some distant future, but now, in the lifetime of those who saw the first. If you are listening closely, perhaps you feel the same shiver others have felt. What are the chances of witnessing such a sequence? Perhaps it is simply that our instruments have grown sharper, our gaze more vigilant. Or perhaps the universe is speaking more loudly now, revealing things it kept hidden before. And what of the object itself? Early observations suggest a body that defies easy classification. It is not quite like the asteroids we know, nor entirely like the comets we catalog. Its path is clear. It is not bound to the sun, and it will never return. It has come, it will pass, and then it will vanish back into the infinite dark. For us, this fleeting moment is all we have. Astronomers scrambled to measure, to model, to simulate every possible trajectory. Computers traced arcs across the solar system, projecting where it came from and where it was going. But like a stranger passing through town, it offered few clues about its origin. No note, no explanation, just its presence. And presence alone was enough to stir the human imagination. Picture yourself in their shoes, sitting in front of the data, realizing you are staring at something not of our solar system. It is humbling, almost overwhelming. You are not just a scientist now, you are a witness to the universe itself, reaching across light years to place something in your care. And what does humanity do when faced with the unknown? We tell stories, we ask questions, we wonder. Could it be natural? Could it be artificial? Could it be intentional? Hold that thought gently, as if cradling a fragile flame. We will not answer it yet. Tonight is not about rushing. Tonight is about letting the questions expand within you like constellations across the sky. As 3I ATLAS drifts into our awareness, it does not come with alarms or warnings. It comes softly, quietly, as if it were always meant to be noticed in the silence of night. Its discovery is not just a fact of science, it is an invitation to imagine what it means to be seen by the cosmos and to see in return. Think for a moment about how fragile our ability to see really is. Out of all the objects that pass through the vastness of space, only a fraction are bright enough, or close enough, to catch our attention. 3-1-ATLAs could have slipped past unnoticed, just another wanderer in the void. And yet, it didn't. It revealed itself just barely, just enough for human eyes to notice. That small fact alone is extraordinary. The cosmos is indifferent. It offers no explanations, no guarantees. But here we are, alive in this specific moment, with instruments sensitive enough to detect a rock tumbling across unimaginable distances. It is as if the universe whispered, and for once, we were quiet enough to hear. Now, imagine the astronomers huddled over their screens, sharing messages in hurried tones. The coordinates bounce between observatories. One telescope confirms. Another double checks. A third, thousands of miles away, catches the same faint speck. The chatter builds into a consensus. This is not an ordinary object. Its trajectory cuts through the solar system, unmistakably hyperbolic. That means one thing: it came from beyond. In the language of science, hyperbolic orbit is a clinical phrase. But let's unwrap it gently. Every familiar object in our solar system follows a loop ellipses that close in on themselves, tracing orbits around the sun. They are bound, tethered, like dancers circling a fire. But a hyperbolic orbit does not close. It is open, endless. It tells us the object is merely visiting, falling inward, and then drifting outward again, never to return, like a traveler who steps briefly into the village square, glances around, and continues on their way. Think about what that means. Every asteroid, every comet, every planet you have ever heard of belongs here. They are children of our sun, born from the same swirling cloud. But 3-IATLAS is not of this family. It is a stranger, a guest, an emissary from a place our telescopes cannot yet reach. As this realization spread, excitement grew. Journals buzzed. Researchers exchanged late-night calls, their voices threaded with awe. There is a special kind of electricity when humanity glimpses something truly new. It feels like standing on the edge of a vast ocean, watching a ship appear on the horizon, one that no one expected, one carrying stories from another shore. And still, the data was sparse. A handful of observations, a trail of numbers across a graph, nothing more. To the eye, 3-IATLAS remained only a point of light, tiny, almost insignificant. Yet in that dot lay a journey longer than human history. Pause here, and let yourself feel the paradox. Something so small, barely visible, holds within it a narrative that stretches across millions, perhaps billions of years. That faint flicker in the telescope lens is not just light. It is time, it is distance, it is everything we don't yet know, distilled into one fragile signal. And what do we humans do with such a signal? We lean closer. We search. We asked. The scientists modeled its path backward, tracing its entry point into the solar system. Their simulations spun out arcs across the galaxy, trying to guess from which distant region it might have come. Was it ejected from another star system? Was it once part of a world we will never see? Or did it originate in the quiet, lonely stretches between the stars, born of collisions we cannot witness? There are no certain answers, not yet. But the mystery is its own kind of gift. In the unknown, our imaginations flourish. Theories bloom like constellations. Some picture a fragment of a shattered planet flung outward into eternity. Others wonder if it might be a messenger, intentionally or accidentally, crossing the gulf of space to reach us. Here is where science and story intertwine. Science measures, story interprets. Science tells us the orbit. Story tells us what it feels like. Together, they create the tapestry of meaning. And for those who listen, like you tonight, both are essential. You are not here just to learn facts, you are here to feel them, to let them settle into your imagination the way stars settle into the night sky. And so, in the stillness of night, we hold the image of astronomers squinting at their screens, hearts racing as the numbers align. We hold the moment when humanity realized it was not looking at something of this world, but of another. The discovery was not loud. There were no sirens, no breaking news in that first instant. Just a hush, a quiet recognition that the universe had opened its hand and shown us a fragment of its infinite story. Breathe with that for a moment. Let the wonder expand inside you. This is the beginning of something larger. The discovery is not just theirs, it is yours, too. As you listen, as you imagine, you are joining the circle of witnesses. You are part of the story now. As the nights passed, more telescopes turned their gaze toward the newcomer. The faint speck became a track across the darkness, a motion so delicate it could only be traced by patience and precision. Observatory after observatory confirmed it. The orbit was not closed. The path was not of our solar system. The whispers had become certainty. There is a strange intimacy in such moments. Across continents, in different languages and time zones, small groups of scientists stared into the same darkness, chasing the same faint signal. Imagine the glow of screens in quiet rooms, the scribbled notes, the hushed conversations. No grand announcement yet, just the hum of collective realization, spreading like ripples in still water. Humanity, in its quiet corners, was waking to a new presence in its sky. And though 3IATLAS revealed itself only as a point of light, imagination began to fill the void. What shape was it? Was it tumbling, like a shard of glass tossed into the air? Was it smooth, reflective, glinting faintly as it spun? Or was it jagged, ancient, scarred by collisions long before Earth was even formed? Every possibility carried a story. Every detail, though unseen, became a canvas for wonder. Consider how little we knew at that moment. A handful of observations, a trajectory plotted with margins of error. The rest was mystery. And yet, in the very absence of certainty, the object's presence grew heavier, more compelling. Sometimes it is the unknown that presses most firmly against our imagination. For those watching, the discovery stirred not only scientific curiosity, but something deeper, reminder of how small we are. Our planet, vast in our daily lives, is nothing more than a blue spark adrift in an endless ocean. And into this ocean comes a traveler, silent and self-contained, reminding us that the universe is far larger than our maps, far stranger than our textbooks. It is humbling, isn't it? To know that while we argue over borders and cling to routines, an emissary from beyond the stars has passed us by. 2-3I Atlas. We are nothing more than a waypoint, a brief chapter in its eternal voyage. And yet to us, it is everything, a mirror in which we see our longing reflected. Pause for a moment and feel that humbling weight. The discovery was not just scientific, it was existential. If an object can wander here, unannounced, what else might the universe send? And if this one has arrived now? Why Why in this age, when our eyes are finally capable of noticing? Theories began to take shape. Some were cautious, measured. Perhaps it was simply a fragment ejected from a distant system, flung outward by the chaotic dance of gravity. Others let their imaginations wander further. What if its arrival was not random? What if its trajectory was, in some unfathomable way, intentional? What if this was not simply an accident of motion, but a message of presence? Such questions are not easily silenced. They echo in quiet rooms. They slip into dreams. They stir something ancient in us, the same spark that once made our ancestors look up at the stars and wonder about gods, about spirits, about signs. We are meaning makers, and when faced with mystery, we reach instinctively for stories that bind us to it. And so, the discovery of 3IATLAS became more than a scientific note. It became a moment of collective dreaming. Even as the astronomers continued their measurements, the rest of us, those who listened, those who read, those who looked up, found ourselves asking what it all meant. Could it be chance? Or could it be fate? These are questions with no immediate answers, but perhaps that is the gift of discovery, not resolution, but invitation. The universe has placed before us a puzzle, and in solving, or even in simply holding it, we come to know ourselves more deeply. So let us close this chapter of the story with a gentle thought. Somewhere tonight, above you, 3IATLAS continues its passage. It does not pause, it does not hurry. It simply moves, as it has for ages, across a canvas of stars. And in its movement, it has drawn us into its orbit, not physically, but in wonder. We are tethered now, not by gravity, but by curiosity. Breathe with that thought. Feel the calm of it, the vastness. The discovery was not loud, not spectacular, but it was profound. It reminded us that the universe is alive with visitors, and that we are still learning to notice them. And perhaps, in noticing, we have taken the first step into a larger conversation, one between humanity and the cosmos itself. The first public announcement came not in a press conference, not in a dramatic broadcast, but in a quiet circular sent through the International Astronomical Union's Minor Planet Center, a designation, 3IATLAS. The third interstellar object ever discovered. The title itself carried a weight of history. Just 2 letters, I for interstellar, and yet behind them stretched decades of speculation and centuries of human wonder. Almost immediately, astronomers across the globe began submitting observation requests. Telescope time is precious, often planned months in advance, but an interstellar visitor is not something you schedule around. Institutions reshuffled priorities. Projects paused. It was, in its way, a scientific emergency. We had only a brief window to study the traveler before it disappeared again into the dark. In Hawaii, where the discovery had first been made, researchers refined their instruments, squeezing every drop of resolution out of their optics. In Chile, the great eyes of the Atacama Desert swiveled toward the object. From space, orbiting telescopes adjusted their calendars, capturing the faint photons that had traveled across billions of miles before reflecting off 3-1 Atlas and finding their way to our detectors. The data began to flow. Points of light mapped against background stars. Tiny shifts recorded with precision. It was like trying to understand a stranger from the briefest of glances across a crowded street. And yet, in those glances, scientists searched for clues. The rotation rate, the reflectivity, the spectrum of its surface. One of the first questions was deceptively simple. What is it made of? The light it reflected held hints of absorption lines, signatures of minerals, ices, organic compounds. Was it rocky, like an asteroid, icy, like a comet, or some strange hybrid, forged in conditions alien to our solar system? The early results were frustratingly ambiguous. It seemed to share characteristics of both. To some, that ambiguity was the most thrilling detail of all. Another mystery lay in its motion. Objects ejected from stellar systems tend to move at high speed, and yet 3IATLAS's velocity was peculiar, fast enough to escape the sun's pull, but not so fast as to suggest a random fluke. Its trajectory cut through our cosmic neighborhood in a way that invited speculation. Could gravitational interactions have nudged it toward us? Or had it been wandering this region of the galaxy for ages, only now passing through our field of view? With every paper, every late-night session at a chalkboard, the questions multiplied. Scientists argued, collaborated, and sometimes disagreed sharply. But beneath the debates was a common pulse. The urgency of the moment. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and perhaps the last one for decades, maybe centuries. Still, outside the professional circles, few truly grasped what was unfolding. Headlines carried fragments. New interstellar visitor detected. Astronomers tracked mystery object, but the tone was often casual, the significance buried. Only those watching closely understood. History was happening in slow motion, in the faint trace of a light no brighter than a star, barely visible to the naked eye. And maybe that is part of the beauty. Not all revelations come in explosions of color or spectacle. Some arrive quietly, hidden in datasheets, whispered among colleagues, before blooming into something the whole world can feel. Scientists, in their careful language, tried to keep expectations grounded. Yet even in the measured reports, you could sense the AHR. It wasn't just another rock. It was something from out there, from beyond us. And in that subtle distinction lay an enormity no headline could fully capture. What made 3IATLAS so captivating to the scientific world was not only its origin, but the challenge it presented. For centuries, astronomy has relied on repetition. Planets circle predictably. Comets return on schedule. Even supernovae follow lifespans, written in physics. But here was something fleeting, unrepeatable. There would be no second chance to observe it. Once it slipped past the reach of our instruments, it would be gone, forever taking its secrets with it. This urgency lit a fire under the scientific community. Research teams that normally competed with one another suddenly found themselves cooperating. Datasets were shared more openly. Preprints circulated within hours, not months. The usual careful pace of peer review seemed almost luxurious compared to the ticking clock of the object's escape. Every night counted. Every clear sky mattered. In university lecture halls, graduate students pored over simulations, adjusting parameters again and again to see if the orbit revealed hidden patterns. At planetary science conferences, rooms that once drew modest crowds now overflowed with standing room-only audiences. Everyone wanted to hear the latest update, the newest hypothesis. It was not unlike a global detective story, except the suspect was a cosmic vagabond, and the clues were scattered across billions of years of history. Among the most debated questions was the object's brightness variation. Telescopes recorded flickers, subtle changes in the light curve. Was it tumbling chaotically like a shard of glass spinning in sunlight? Or was it elongated, perhaps even shaped in a way no natural process could easily explain? The data sparked intense arguments. Some claimed it was evidence of an unusually long, cigar-like body. Others suggested a flat, disc-like form, something more akin to a cosmic pancake. Each possibility seemed stranger than the last, and each carried implications that stirred both fascination and discomfort. Meanwhile, chemists and physicists examined the spectral fingerprints. They found hints of complex carbon molecules, suggesting that 3I Atlas carried organic material. Not life, not in the sense we know it, but the building blocks, the seeds of chemistry that could, under the right conditions, blossom into biology. If true, this object wasn't just a travel, it was a messenger of possibilities, bearing echoes of alien laboratories written into stone and ice. In some circles, the conversation turned speculative, even daring. Could such an object be intentionally crafted? Was it conceivable that another civilization, long ago, had launched fragments deliberately or accidentally into the void? Mainstream science treated these questions cautiously, often dismissing them as fringe curiosities. Yet, beneath the surface, even the most disciplined researchers could not entirely silence the thought. After all, science begins with imagination. Still, the majority remained grounded. The prevailing consensus leaned toward natural explanations. A shard of a shattered planetesimal, perhaps, or debris slingshotted from a violent encounter near some distant star. And yet, even those explanations were extraordinary. To hold in our instruments a piece of another solar system, a fragment shaped under suns we had never seen, was no less awe-inspiring than any science fiction. The world of astronomy, usually a niche corner of academia, suddenly found itself brushed by the public spotlight. Articles appeared in major newspapers. Television hosts mentioned the mysterious visitor in passing, yet most of the public attention remained fleeting, drowned out by louder, more immediate concerns of daily life. For the scientists, that was almost a blessing. They were not chasing headlines, they were chasing truth, and the fewer distractions, the better. Late into the night, observatories hummed with quiet focus. Imagine the scene: the faint whir of motors aligning a telescope, the glow of a monitor against tired eyes, the sudden intake of breath when a fresh image appeared. A streak, a dot, a shifting coordinate. Proof that the visitor was still there, still moving. Proof that time remained, though it was slipping quickly away. What science offered, above all, was not certainty but process. Each measurement sharpened the picture, each equation narrowed the possibilities. And yet the closer researchers looked, the more the mystery deepened. For in trying to understand 3I Atlas, we were forced to confront not just what it was, but what it represented. We were glimpsing the broader galaxy not as a distant abstraction, but as something that touches us directly, crossing into our skies, brushing against our instruments, refusing to remain a background idea. And so, the scientific response became more than just data collection. It became a meditation on perspective. For those studying it, the object was both a challenge and a gift, a reminder that even in the age of satellites and space telescopes, the universe still has surprises, still has ways of humbling us, still has stories to tell, if only we are ready to listen. As the weeks unfolded, the visitor became not just a subject of research, but a kind of silent companion to the scientific community. Each night it moved farther away, its faint glow slipping toward the edges of detectability. Yet with every new dataset, the bond between human curiosity and this anonymous traveler grew stronger. In countless labs and observatories, men and women who had never met were now united by the same question: what exactly are we looking at? Theories multiplied. Some claimed that the elongated form, if confirmed, it could be the result of tidal stretching, as if the object had once ventured too close to a massive star and been pulled into a long, fragile sliver. Others suggested it might be a fragment chipped off from a collision, flung across interstellar distances by violence we could hardly imagine. A few held on to the idea of something artificial, though such voices spoke softly, aware of the skepticism that comes with such speculation. But what intrigued nearly everyone was the timing. Why now? Why this century? This decade? This moment? The cosmos has existed for billions of years. Interstellar fragments have likely passed through before, unnoticed. And yet, it was only now, in an era when humanity had the instruments to notice, that 3I Atlas revealed itself. The coincidence stirred whispers of fate, of destiny, not in the language of equations, but in the quiet spaces between them. The more data arrived, the more contradictions surfaced. Light curves suggested both tumbling and stability. Spectra hinted at organics, but lacked decisive proof. The object refused to settle into a neat category, as if resisting our attempts to label it. For scientists trained to value clarity, this was frustrating. And yet, there was also wonder in that refusal. Perhaps the universe was reminding us that it does not exist to satisfy our neat definitions. Behind the scenes, collaborations grew intense. Emails crisscrossed continents. Zoom calls stretched past midnight. Some researchers sacrificed weekends, holidays, even family gatherings because opportunities like this come only once in a lifetime, and they slip away quickly. It was not pressure imposed by institutions or deadlines. It was something deeper, a personal recognition that we were in the presence of history. And then, of course, there was the human side, the emotions that data cannot fully capture. Students who once doubted their career path found new motivation, energized by the mystery. Veteran astronomers who had spent decades gazing at predictable stars felt rekindled excitement, as if the cosmos had sent them a gift for their twilight years. For some, 3I Atlas was more than an object. It was a reminder of why they had chosen science in the first place. The thrill of not knowing, the joy of pursuit, the possibility of discovery. In quiet offices, late at night, a kind of reverence grew. Imagine a lone researcher staring at a faint scatter of pixels on a screen, knowing those pixels represented something that had traveled for eons, something older than humanity itself, older than our species. First words, older than the pyramids or the ice ages. That realization humbled even the most analytical minds. It was one thing to read about cosmic timescales in textbooks. It was another to be confronted with them, pixel by pixel, in real time. The scientific response was not perfect. Mistakes were made, instruments faltered, hypotheses collapsed. Yet that was part of the process, too. For science, unlike myths, does not demand immediate answers. It demands patience, persistence, and a willingness to revise. And in that sense, 3I Atlas was the perfect teacher. It forced us to accept ambiguity, to live with questions, to treasure the fleeting chance to witness without demanding resolution. When the final measurements were taken, when the object drifted too far to track, the mood was bittersweet. A sense of loss lingered, as though an old friend had slipped beyond reach. But there was pride as well, because humanity had risen to the challenge. Across languages, across nations, across backgrounds, scientists had gathered around a single mystery and, in doing so, they had revealed something about themselves. That we are, at our core, explorers. That even when faced with the infinite, we lean forward, not back. That curiosity is not just a trait of science, but a trait of humanity. And so, the story of the scientific response to 3IATLAS was not just about data points and hypotheses. It was about the human spirit, the willingness to look up instead of down, the courage to engage with the unknown. In its silence, the object had spoken volumes. In its refusal to yield simple answers, it had gifted us something deeper. The reminder that the universe is not finished with us yet, that it still holds mysteries capable of awakening wonder. Even in an age of constant noise. From the beginning of time, when the first humans gazed upward at the night sky, imagination has filled the spaces where knowledge could not yet reach. Before telescopes, before equations, before we could measure the faint light of a distant star, we crafted stories. A comet was not just a chunk of ice, it was a sword slicing the heavens, a warning, a messenger. A wandering star was not an object of gravity. It was a deity, a spirit, or a harbinger of change. 3.1.ATLAS entered our modern age of science, but the human instinct to weave myths around the unknown remained alive and well. As soon as the news spread, whispers emerged. Some claimed it was an omen, a celestial sign that humanity was entering a new chapter, perhaps one of trial, perhaps one of awakening. Others saw it as a reminder of ancient prophecies, the return of the star of destiny, or the long-awaited sign of a hidden truth. What fascinates us about such myths is not whether they are factually correct, but what they reveal about ourselves. Myths are mirrors, reflecting our fears, our hopes, and our longing for meaning. When ancient civilizations saw fiery streaks in the sky, they often tied them to upheaval, plagues, wars, or the fall of kings. When they saw rare alignments of planets, they imagined gateways opening between worlds. These stories gave shape to the unknown, turning uncertainty into narrative, chaos into symbol. In this sense, 3IATLAS is not just a scientific puzzle. It is the continuation of a human tradition as old as language itself, the tradition of explaining the heavens not only with logic, but with imagination. And while we now know more than ever, we are still drawn to that same instinct. The rational part of us studies orbits and compositions, but the poetic part of us, perhaps the deeper part, asks questions science cannot. Why now? Why us? Could it mean something more? Consider the myths of the ancient Greeks, who peopled the heavens with gods and heroes. Orion still strides across the winter sky, forever hunting. Cassiopeia still sits on her throne, upside down for her vanity. To them, the stars were not cold points of fusion, but characters in a drama. If they had seen 3I Atlas streaking through their skies, what tale might they have told? Perhaps they would have imagined it as a divine spear hurled by Zeus, or a sign from Apollo of distant wars yet to come. Or think of the Maya, whose astronomical precision was rivaled only by their mythic imagination. They saw time itself as cyclical, woven into the fabric of the cosmos. A strange visitor like 3I Atlas might have been interpreted as the turning of a great wheel, the signal that one world age was ending and another was about to begin. For them, myth and astronomy were not opposites, they were threads of the same tapestry. Even in modern times, myths cling to our imagination. Science fiction is, in many ways, the mythology of the contemporary world. It dresses our cosmic questions in new clothing. Alien probes, interstellar emissaries, civilizations beyond the stars. When writers and filmmakers imagine objects like 3I Atlas as scouts or messengers, they are doing what shamans and storytellers have always done, giving voice to the mysteries that data alone cannot satisfy. And so, as the object passed silently through our skies, it became not only a subject of observation but also of story. On forums, in late-night conversations, in quiet whispers, people speculated. What if it's watching us? What if it's a test? What if it's the first of many? These are not questions that appear in scientific journals, but they appear in human hearts. Because myth is not about evidence, it is about meaning. The most striking part of this interplay between myth and science is that the two are not enemies. They are companions, each addressing a different need. Science seeks to explain how something happens. Myth seeks to explain why it matters. Together, they form the double helix of human curiosity, spiraling around the same mystery from two perspectives. And 3IATLAS, like the comets and eclipses before it, has awakened both halves of that spiral. In its silence, it has become a canvas. Onto it, we project our fears of disaster, our hopes of contact, our longing for transcendence. Whether or not the object is an accident, a fragment, or something more, it has already fulfilled a deeper role. It has reminded us that the sky is not empty. It is alive with stories, waiting for us to tell them. When people first heard of Three-Eye Atlas, many did not dive into equations or orbital diagrams. Instead, their minds turned instinctively to stories. Some recalled legends of fiery dragons streaking across the night. Others remembered tales of stars that guided prophets, or stones that fell from the heavens carrying messages from gods. The fact that we live in an age of satellites and smartphones did not erase those ancient impulses. If anything, it gave them new forms, spreading them instantly across the globe through whispers in digital spaces. One of the most common threads in these modern myths was the idea of a test. Across cultures, myths often present trials. Heroes must face ordeals to prove their worth. Civilizations must endure challenges to advance. 3-1 ATLAS, in this light, was not just a visitor but an examiner. Was humanity ready to notice? Was it ready to ask the right questions, to see beyond its own distractions? In mythic logic, the arrival of such an object was not random, it was purposeful, chosen. Another theme that emerged was the idea of the messenger. In myth after myth, strange arrivals carry warnings. Sometimes they herald floods or plagues. Sometimes they announce rebirths or transformations. A comet might signal the fall of an empire, but it might also mark the rise of a new age. For those inclined to mystical thinking, Three-Eye Atlas felt like a message from the universe itself. Pay attention, something is coming. What is striking is how these interpretations echo ancient traditions. The Romans believed comets foretold the deaths of emperors. The Chinese kept meticulous records, treating each celestial oddity as part of a grand conversation between heaven and earth. The Navajo saw shooting stars as signs that the holy people were watching. All of these myths were less about the objects themselves than about the human desire for connection, to believe that the cosmos is not indifferent, but alive with intention. And perhaps that is why Three-Eye Atlas captured not only the attention of scientists but also the imagination of ordinary people. For in its silence, it allowed us to speak. It did not tell us what it was, it let us wonder. It let us fill the silence with our own voices, our own interpretations, our own fears and hopes. In some ways, this is the essence of myth-making. We do not create myths because we lack answers. We create myths because answers alone are not enough. Knowing the chemical makeup of a comet does not tell us what it means. Measuring an orbit does not tell us how it should change us. Myth steps into that gap, providing symbolic meaning where data stops. And though we now have spectrographs and supercomputers, we still need stories. Without them, knowledge risks becoming hollow, stripped of the very humanity that seeks it. Consider how modern culture has already transformed 3-1 ATLAS into art. Digital illustrations show it as a glowing shard, a dark spear, a silver craft. Writers spin short stories in which it is a probe, a relic, or a seed. Filmmakers imagine future documentaries where the object's secrets are revealed long after it has vanished. This creative outpouring may not add to the scientific record, but it adds to something equally important: the cultural record of how humanity responded. And when future generations look back, those myths will speak as loudly as the data itself. There is also comfort in myth. In a world of uncertainty, climate change, social upheaval, rapid technologies, a mystery in the sky can paradoxically make us feel less alone. If the universe is speaking, then at least it notices us. If the heavens send omens, then our struggles are part of a larger story, not random chaos. This is the gift of myth. It provides a place for the human heart to rest, even in the face of the unknown. Perhaps that is why bedtime stories about the cosmos are so soothing. When we lie in the dark, listening to tales of visitors from other stars, we are tapping into an ancient practice. Long before electricity, long before writing, humans sat by fires under the night sky, telling stories to soften the edge of fear. They spoke of gods, of heroes, of monsters, and, in doing so, they found sleep. Today, when we tell the story of Three-Eye Atlas in a calm, quiet voice, we are continuing that ritual. We are bridging science and myth, reason and imagination, in a way that comforts as much as it inspires. And maybe that is the deeper role of Three-Eye Atlas, not only to remind us that the universe is vast and strange, but to remind us that we are storytellers. That when the night sky stirs with mystery, we respond not only with telescopes but with tales. And those tales, in their own way, keep us awake to wonder even as they gently carry us toward sleep. As weeks turned into months, Three-Eye Atlas continued its silent journey, slipping deeper into the vast dark. Yet even as it receded, its presence grew larger in our imagination. It became more than a faint speck on astronomers' charts. It became a character in our collective myth, a visitor, a messenger, perhaps even a trickster whose meaning would be debated for generations. Modern myths began to flourish not in temples or stone carvings, but in digital spaces. Social media threads spun tales of hidden civilizations watching us through this object. Online forums debated whether it was a harbinger of environmental collapse, a cosmic warning to change our ways before it was too late. YouTube creators crafted animations of it as a sleek vessel, hinting at technologies far beyond our reach. Even those who dismissed such ideas as fantasy could not deny the allure. The unknown invites us to imagine, and imagination thrives in uncertainty. What is striking is that these myths often reflected the anxieties of our time. Ancient peoples feared famine and conquest, so their sky omens reflected those fears. Today, we fear extinction, artificial intelligence, ecological collapse. And so our myths about 3i Atlas take those shapes. Some imagine it as a probe, judging whether we are fit to join a galactic community. Others see it as a mirror, sent to show us what happens to civilizations that fail to survive their own crises. In each case, the object becomes not just a rock but a symbol and archetype carrying our deepest worries and our highest hopes. At the same time, artists and dreamers used the visitor to spark visions of transcendence. What if it carried seeds of life, ready to plant new worlds? What if it was the remnant of a journey begun by beings who once faced the same struggles we face now? Such imaginings may never be proven, yet they hold power because they echo something essential, the belief that we are not alone, that the story of intelligence and survival stretches beyond Earth. This interplay between science and myth is not a contradiction. Rather, it is a dialogue. Science gathers the data, the spectra, the orbits, the probabilities, the meaning, the omens, the lessons, the narratives. Together, they create a fuller picture of our encounter with 3i Atlas. To study it without myth would be to strip it of its human context. To mythologize it without science would be to drift and anchored, but together, they balance. Fact as the skeleton, story as the flesh. And perhaps this is why 3i Atlas has stayed with us even as it fades into the distance. It is not simply an object we once observed. It is a tale we continue to tell. Every time a child looks up at the stars and asks if there are others out there, they are, in a sense, continuing the myth. Every time a storyteller whispers about hidden civilizations or cosmic messages, they are adding another thread to the tapestry. Myths are not meant to be finished. They are meant to live, to evolve, to echo. So when we speak of 3i Atlas, we are not only speaking of science, we are participating in the oldest human tradition, the tradition of turning the sky into story. And in doing so, we remind ourselves that the universe is not just something we measure, it is something we belong to, something we interpret, something we weave into our dreams. As you drift deeper into this quiet story, imagine the ancients lying under the same stars, watching visitors cross the heavens and wondering what they meant. Imagine the fireside whispers, the chants, the songs. Now replace the fire with the glow of your screen, the chants with the hum of modern language. The ritual is the same. We are still humans beneath the stars, making meaning out of mystery. And so, as 3i Atlas continues into the void, it carries with it not just rock and dust, but our imagination. We have inscribed it with myths, painted it with symbolism, clothed it in the fabric of human longing. Whether it was an accident or a messenger, natural or crafted, the truth is this: it has already transformed us. It has reminded us that even in an age of science, the heart still longs for story. And the sky still answers with silence that we eagerly fill. When 3i Atlas first streaked into view, it seemed like a fleeting visitor here for a moment, then gone into the darkness forever. Yet even in those brief encounters, scientists rushed to gather every scrap of data possible. Telescopes across the world were aimed at the tiny dot, from Hawaii to Chile, from Canary Islands observatories to orbiting instruments above Earth. They knew that opportunities like this would be vanishingly rare. To catch a messenger from beyond our solar system was like trying to study a bird as it flew past your window blink, and the chance would be gone. The first questions were simple, almost childlike. What is it? Where did it come from? How fast is it moving? But those questions opened into more complex puzzles. Unlike the comets and asteroids familiar to us, 3i Atlas was on a hyperbolic orbitate's trajectory, told scientists that it was not bound to the sun. This was proof it had come from interstellar space. It was not simply another wandering rock from our own cosmic neighborhood. It was a traveler from elsewhere, a fragment of a different story written light years away. The initial measurements focused on its brightness. Astronomers tracked how its light shifted as it rotated, noting irregular flickers that suggested an elongated shape, perhaps like a cigar or a pancake, though no two scientists agreed fully. Some argued that it was many times longer than it was wide, spinning in a way that caused wild swings in its reflected light. Others believed the flickers could be explained by a flatter, disc-like body tumbling unpredictably. Already, mystery was taking root. Nature did not usually make objects shaped like this, or at least, none that we had seen before. Spectroscopic studies were the next tool. By splitting its faint light into wavelengths, scientists hoped to detect what it was made of, yet the results only deepened the enigma. Instead of the clear chemical fingerprints we expected from a comet-frozen water, carbon compounds, Simple molecules, the spectra of 3I Atlas were ambiguous. It seemed darker, less reflective than anticipated, with no obvious cometary tail. If it was icy, the ice was either buried deep beneath the surface or made of unusual materials. If it was rocky, it was coated in something that resisted easy classification. Then came the question of motion. Careful tracking showed that 3I Atlas did not move exactly as gravity predicted. Its path seemed to deviate slightly, as if some invisible hand were nudging it. For comets, this is often explained by outgassing the release of sublimating ice that acts like a jet. But 3I Atlas lacked the visible tail that usually accompanies such behavior. Could it be venting in a subtle, invisible way, or was something stranger at play? Some scientists lean toward exotic explanations, such as hydrogen ice, that evaporates invisibly, or even more speculative ideas that brushed against the edge of science fiction. The debates grew intense, not only in academic journals, but also in press conferences and late-night television interviews. Was 3I Atlas a natural fragment, chipped off some distant planetesimal belt, wandering for millions of years before slipping into our view? Or could it be just possibly something artificial? The suggestion was controversial, but it lingered. A Harvard astronomer publicly proposed that the object's odd acceleration and unusual shape could be consistent with a thin, light sail-like structure, perhaps debris from an alien civilization. Other scientists pushed back strongly, warning against leaping to extraordinary conclusions. And yet, the idea was out there, and once released, it could not be forgotten. Each new data point added another layer of intrigue rather than clarity. The more we learned, the less we seemed to understand. Some argued it was the remnant of a shattered comet core, its volatile surface long eroded by countless eons drifting between stars. Others suggested it could be a chunk of nitrogen ice, knocked off a Pluto-like world in another system, polished smooth by cosmic rays until it gleamed like a shard of frozen glass. The theories multiplied, each elegant, each plausible in its own way, yet none able to fully solve the riddle. For scientists, this was both exhilarating and frustrating. On one hand, 3I Atlas had given us a rare glimpse of material born in another star system, a sample of the wider galaxy delivered to our doorstep. On the other, it refused to fit neatly into our categories. Every answer led to more questions. Every observation carried uncertainty. And yet, in that uncertainty lay wonder. We were forced to confront not only the limits of our knowledge, but also the immensity of the unknown. Perhaps that was its greatest gift. In its silence, in its ambiguity, 3I Atlas reminded us that the universe is not yet tamed. It is still capable of surprising us, still able to whisper mysteries into our telescopes. In a time when much of the sky feels charted, when satellites outnumber stars in some photographs, here was something that slipped through unbidden, carrying with it a story we may never fully decode. As more telescopes joined the chase, the picture of 3I Atlas grew sharper, yet still incomplete, like a jigsaw puzzle, missing half its pieces. The data were often faint, blurred by distance and time. Each observatory had only minutes of visibility before Earth's rotation carried the object out of sight. Coordinating across continents became essential. Scientists traded notes at all hours, their emails carrying a tone that was part urgency, part awe. They knew that this moment, fleeting as it was, would be remembered for decades. The debates took on a strangely philosophical character. At one conference, a planetary scientist compared 3I Atlas to the first fossils ever unearthed, shapes carved into stone that hinted at an ancient life we barely understood. Just as paleontologists once argued whether such fossils were tricks of geology or evidence of vanished creatures, astronomers now argued whether 3I Atlas was simply a rock or a relic of something more extraordinary. The question was not just about composition or orbit. It was about what stories we were willing to entertain, what possibilities we were bold enough to imagine. One group proposed a theory rooted in the mundane, yet elegant. They suggested that 3I Atlas was a fragment torn from a planetesimal belt in another solar system, perhaps long ago. Stellar encounters can fling debris outward with tremendous force, sending shards of rock and ice on eternal journeys between stars. Over millions of years, billions of such objects may wander, invisible, through the galaxy. Statistically, it was inevitable that one would eventually pass through our solar system. If this was true, then 3I Atlas was not unique, it alone, the first we had managed to notice. A single raindrop, made visible in a storm we had never looked for. Another theory reached for the exotic. Could it be made of hydrogen ice, so fragile and rare that it would evaporate invisibly in the warmth of our sun? This would explain the subtle acceleration without leaving the usual cometary trail. Yet hydrogen ice is unlikely to survive the long interstellar voyage, vulnerable to cosmic rays and background radiation. Skeptics dismissed the idea as improbable, but it lingered in discussions. A reminder that the universe may hold forms of matter far less familiar than our textbooks suggest. Then, there were the boldest voices, the ones who dared to whisper artifact. They pointed to the object's acceleration, its odd shape, its lack of typical signatures. Perhaps it was not natural at all. Perhaps it was a probe, a fragment of technology, or even a broken sail drifting from a civilization long gone. The suggestion sparked headlines, ignited imagination, and invited controversy. Most scientists rejected it firmly, unwilling to leap beyond the evidence. Yet the idea resonated with the public, who saw in it a tantalizing possibility. Confirmation, at last, that we are not alone. The beauty of science is that even disagreement can be fruitful. Competing theories push each other, refine the questions, sharpen the observations. 3.1. ATLAs forced researchers to revisit assumptions about how planets form, how debris travels, how fragile structures might survive interstellar journeys. New computer simulations explored how gravitational slingshots between stars could accelerate small objects to escape velocity. Models predicted the likely number of interstellar visitors passing silently through our solar system each year, invisible to our instruments. What once seemed like a singular miracle now appeared as part of a larger cosmic flow. Yet, the truth remained elusive. With every passing day, the object grew fainter, slipping beyond the reach of even our most powerful telescopes. Soon, it was gone, leaving only the trail of data collected in those few frantic weeks. Scientists were left with graphs, light curves, and number signs of something extraordinary, but not the object itself. There would be no sample missions, no close-up photographs, no second chances. The visitor had moved on. This finality gave the data an almost sacred quality. Researchers pored over them with reverence, knowing that even the smallest clue might hold meaning. They debated the uncertainties in brightness, the errors in trajectory, the assumptions hidden in their models. Was the acceleration real, or a product of miscalculation? Was the shape elongated, or simply an illusion created by tumbling motion? Each possibility branched into more possibilities, until the object felt less like a solved problem and more like a riddle carved into the stars. Perhaps that is why 3I Atlas captured not just scientific minds but human hearts. It reminded us that the universe does not hand us easy answers. It offers us fragments, glimpses, mysteries, and in the act of chasing them, we grow not just in knowledge, but in imagination. For whether 3I Atlas was a shard of frozen rock or a crafted relic, its greatest legacy may be the questions it left behind. In the months that followed, papers were written, preprints debated, and conferences buzzed with the lingering mystery of 3I Atlas. Each dataset was revisited, reanalyzed, refined. The object became a case study not just in astronomy, but in the philosophy of science itself. What do we do when the evidence resists our categories? How do we proceed when an explanation seems almost within reach, but remains elusive, just beyond our grasp? Some argued that the lesson of 3I Atlas was humility. The universe, they said, had revealed a truth we had overlooked, that interstellar visitors are not rare, but common. We simply hadn't been watching carefully enough. Our instruments, tuned for near-Earth asteroids and comets, had not been built to catch such fleeting guests. This realization led to new proposals for wide-field surveys, faster detection algorithms, and networks of telescopes capable of spotting the next interstellar traveler before it vanished into the void. Others focused less on the object itself and more on its implications. If fragments can drift freely between stars, then so can the seeds of life. The panspermia hypothesis, once relegated to the fringes, gained new attention. Perhaps 3I Atlas was not unique, but part of a larger web of cosmic exchange, a traffic of materials that binds solar systems together. In that light, life on Earth might not be an isolated miracle, but one note in a galaxy-wide symphony. There were even those who wondered aloud whether 3I Atlas might serve as a kind of calibration point for our imagination. Just as the sight of distant galaxies forced Einstein and his peers to rethink gravity and cosmology. Perhaps this visitor was nudging us toward ideas not yet fully formed. Dark matter, dark energy, hidden dimensions. Our universe is already full of mysteries. Could this object be a hint that we are missing some fundamental piece of the puzzle? But for all the speculation, there was also a quiet acceptance. The visitor had come and gone. Whatever it truly was, we might never know. And in that acceptance lay a kind of beauty. The cosmos had reminded us that not all questions have answers, and not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Some are meant to inspire wonder, to kindle imagination, to expand the boundaries of what we believe possible. Even in the absence of certainty, the scientific process endured. New surveys were built, inspired directly by the lessons of 3I Atlas. Astronomers whispered of a future where such interstellar visitors might be intercepted by spacecraft, their surfaces sampled, their secrets finally revealed. The visitor, though gone, had already reshaped our ambitions. And so, in the long nights when the stars shine cold and steady, it is easy to imagine 3I Atlas still out there, slipping further into darkness. Perhaps it drifts between unlit giants, through dust clouds and invisible rivers of cosmic rays. Perhaps it has already passed into another system, its faint glow caught by the instruments of distant beings. who asked themselves the same questions we did. For in the end, what matters is not only what 3i Atlas was, but what it did to us. It made us pause, look up, and wonder. It bridged the gap between science and story, between data and dream. And in that sense, it fulfilled a role far greater than any single theory could contain. As you breathe softly, listening in the stillness, remember that the story of science is never finished. Each discovery is a doorway. Each mystery, a lantern held just far enough ahead to keep us walking. 3i Atlas may have slipped away, but it left behind a trail of light in our minds, a reminder that the universe is vast, strange, and endlessly inviting. And with that, let us turn gently toward what came next. For after the data and debates, after the excitement and uncertainty, there was something deeper waiting. The human response, not just of scientists, but of cultures, artists, and dreamers everywhere. The first images of 3i Atlas, blurry, grainy, captured by telescopes pushing the limits of their sensitivity, did not remain confined to academic journals for long. Within days, they were circulating across social media feeds, stitched into news headlines, and reimagined in colorful digital artwork. What had begun as a technical discovery quickly became a cultural event, a story that transcended science and entered the shared imagination of millions. News anchors spoke of it with hushed fascination, their voices carrying both excitement and unease. Was it just a rock, or was it something more? Graphics teams rendered sleek, elongated shapes gliding silently through the void, each more dramatic than the last. Talk shows invited experts, skeptics, and storytellers to weigh in, turning the object into a stage for human hopes and fears. Even late-night comedians found material in it, joking about interstellar neighbors checking in on us, or about space rocks doing a better job of uniting people than politicians ever could. But beneath the humor and spectacle, something deeper stirred. People were reminded viscerally that the cosmos is not empty, that beyond our atmosphere, beyond the planets and the familiar points of light, there are travelers passing by, uninvited and unexplained. It was as though a curtain had been drawn back, revealing that our solar system is not a sealed chamber, but a crossroads where the universe occasionally sends a stranger. Artists seized on this imagery. Digital painters created glowing portraits of 3i Atlas, not as a rock, but as a mysterious vessel, adorned with alien architecture or inscribed with strange glyphs. Musicians composed soundscapes inspired by its silence, layering deep ambient tones with shimmering echoes to capture the sensation of drifting in the dark. Writers penned short stories, blending science fiction with myth, imagining the object as a harbinger, a messenger, or even a seed drifting from star to star. For a brief moment, 3i Atlas became a mirror held up to humanity. Some saw in it evidence of cosmic beauty, a reminder that we live in a universe of infinite possibility. Others saw a warning, a shadow of doom, a potential danger whose path crossed ours too closely for comfort. Online discussions divided between optimists dreaming of contact and pessimists predicting catastrophe. The object became a canvas on which to paint our collective psyche. Perhaps the most striking reactions were not in the headlines or the art, but in the quiet, personal reflections people shared. Parents told their children about it as a bedtime story, softening the science into wonder. Couples walked outside at night, gazing upward with a new sense of connection to the stars. Strangers wrote posts about how small and fragile they felt, about how the object reminded them of Earth's vulnerability and its beauty. It is in these quiet responses that one sees the true cultural power of such a discovery. Facts alone rarely move societies. But when facts are wrapped in story, when they stir emotions and imagination, they ripple outward in ways no dataset ever could. 3i Atlas was not just an astronomical object. It was an event, a shared moment in which billions of people, whether they understood the science or not, were drawn into a collective act of wonder. And that wonder did not remain passive. It fueled debates, inspired creations, and sparked dreams of what else might be out there. For in the end, the object was more than a visitor. It was a reminder that we are part of a larger story, a cosmic drama unfolding far beyond the boundaries of our world. If the initial coverage of 3i Atlas was characterized by awe and curiosity, what followed in the weeks after was a storm of interpretation. News outlets competed for attention, each headline more dramatic than the last. Alien probe or cosmic rock. Mysterious visitor accelerates without explanation. Are we being watched? The language of uncertainty, sprinkled with just enough possibility of the extraordinary, kept audiences clicking, watching, and debating. Television documentaries rushed into production. Producers who once focused on ancient civilizations or paranormal mysteries now had fresh material, served on a silver platter by the cosmos itself. They overlaid scientists' cautious statements with dramatic music and glowing animations, presenting the visitor as a harbinger of something immense. For every researcher explaining orbital mechanics, there was an editor who slowed their words, added an ominous chord, and left viewers with the sense that perhaps, just perhaps, the truth was stranger than anyone dared admit. On social media, the story grew wild wings. Conspiracy forums lit up with speculation that governments were hiding the real nature of the object. Some claimed it was a surveillance probe, dispatched by unknown civilizations to monitor humanity's progress. Others tied it to ancient prophecies, weaving connections between its path and predictions from sacred texts. Memes appeared overnight, some humorous, others unsettling, depicting Three-Eye Atlas as a looming intruder or a celestial judge hovering above Earth. For many, the object became a vessel, not of rock and dust, but of narrative. It absorbed whatever people poured into it. Fear, hope, skepticism, longing. One person might see in it the promise of contact with benevolent beings. Another might see the shadow of disaster, a cosmic warning to change course before it was too late. In the echo chambers of the internet, each vision amplified itself, until Three-Eye-Atlas became a myth more than an object, a story told in countless variations. Even traditional media, wary of fueling hysteria, could not resist the pull. They published balanced reports, but often placed the most speculative theories in bold at the top, leaving the cautious science buried in the fine print. The effect was subtle but powerful. The mystery remained foregrounded, the doubt emphasized, the possibilities endless. In an era when attention is currency, Three-Eye-Atlas became a treasure trove, yet not all the coverage leaned toward fear. Many outlets framed the visitor as a symbol of unity. They spoke of how, for a brief moment, humanity lifted its gaze from terrestrial divisions to contemplate a shared sky. Political commentators mused that nothing else, no election, no treaty, no crisis could spark global curiosity in quite the same way. For once, billions of people were talking about the same object, asking the same questions, looking up at the same stars. And within classrooms, libraries, and coffee shops, the story sparked quieter revolutions. Teachers used it as a lesson in critical thinking, urging students to separate speculation from data. Amateur astronomers dusted off telescopes, eager to track the skies for themselves. Writers found in it the seed of new novels, filmmakers the seed of new scripts. The media may have amplified the spectacle, but it also spread the spark of imagination far and wide. It is in this interplay between sensationalism and sincerity, between fear and fascination, that we see the cultural power of Three-Eye Atlas. It was never just about science, it was about story, and in the telling of that story, the media became not merely observers, but participants in the shaping of a modern myth. As the weeks turned into months, the frenzy of headlines began to fade. News stories crowded the cycle, fresh controversies demanded attention, and Three-Eye-Atlas slipped quietly from the front pages. But in culture, the object lingered. Its afterimage remained etched in songs, in art, in quiet conversations whispered under night skies. Media may have moved on, but the myth had already taken root. Independent creators carried the torch. On YouTube, videos speculating about its nature continued to rack up millions of views long after the visitor itself had vanished beyond detection. Podcasters wove it into episodes about ancient civilizations and UFO lore. Indie game developers designed atmospheric worlds where players followed an elongated, alien fragment drifting across cosmic seas. Even fashion brands toyed with its imagery-elongated shapes. Minimalist designs, patterns that suggested something just beyond comprehension. In literature, the object appeared like a ghost. Some novels mentioned it in passing as a symbol of cosmic chance. Others made it central, spinning entire narratives around what might happen if such a visitor returned not silent, but speaking. Poets found in it metaphors for exile, for longing, for the mysteries that brush against our lives before disappearing forever. Each retelling reshaped it, stretched it, gave it new life. And in classrooms, professors looked back on the moment as a case study in how science meets society. They dissected the media coverage, the conspiracy theories, the art. They asked students, what does this reveal about us? Not just about the stars. The answers varied, but one theme was constant. Three-Eye-Atlas had reminded humanity that our universe is alive with mystery, and that we hunger for meaning even when certainty is impossible. Communities also wove it into their shared identity. Amateur astronomy clubs hosted annual visitor nights, marking the date when Three-Eye Atlas was closest to Earth. Festivals projected cosmic visuals onto walls, while ambient music played, creating collective experiences of wonder. Some groups even treated the object as a quasi-mythical symbol, a modern version of the ancient omens that once guided agricultural cycles or political decisions. What is most fascinating is how Three-Eye-Atlas blurred the boundary between fact and story. It was, at its core, a measurable phenomenon, a trajectory, a brightness, a curve of acceleration. And yet, in culture, it became far more, a canvas for hopes, fears, artistry, and myth-making. Its reality and its symbolism are now inseparable. When future generations read about it, they may find as much poetry as data, as much storytelling as science. Perhaps that is the ultimate cultural impact of the visitor. It showed us that even in an age of high technology and relentless information, we still crave mystery. We still gather around modern fire screens, feeds, streams, to share stories about what might lie beyond. We still turn distant objects into mirrors of ourselves, reflections of our longings, our anxieties, our dreams. So as 3IATLAS drifted silently into the dark, it left behind not just numbers and scientific papers, but echoes in human culture. It became a myth of the digital age, carried not in stone tablets or oral traditions, but in hashtags, videos, and art installations. The medium has changed, but the impulse is the same: to take the unknown and make it part of us. And with this cultural resonance, the story of 3IATLAS prepares to shift once more. For beyond the media and the myths lies a deeper question, one that touches not just how we imagine the cosmos, but how we imagine ourselves within it. That question, lingering like a faint star at the edge of vision, will lead us onward, into the next part of our journey. When the noise of headlines faded and the waves of speculation subsided, what remained was a quiet space. In that silence, 3IATLAS became less a news story and more a mirror. It reflected questions humanity has always carried but rarely dares to face in the rush of daily life. What does it mean that something from another star passed through our cosmic neighborhood? And what does our reaction to it say about us, here on Earth? For many, the object underscored our smallness. Astronomers calculated its speed, reminding us that 3I Atlas had traveled for millions of years through interstellar space before brushing past our sun. That sheer scale makes human lifetimes feel like the blink of an eye. Our empires, our struggles, our ambitions, all of them compressed into a tiny grain of time against the endless river that carried the visitor to us. Some found that thought humbling, even crushing. Others found it liberating. If we are so small, perhaps the weight of our worries is smaller too. There is an old paradox in philosophy. When confronted with the infinite, we can either despair or rejoice. Despair, because our lives seem insignificant. Rejoice, because within that immensity, even the briefest flicker of awareness is precious beyond measure. 3.1ATLAS embodied that paradox. Its presence whispered both truths at once. We are a fragile species in a fragile world. And yet, by noticing it, by naming it, we became part of its story. In some sense, the object did not pass us by unnoticed. It left a mark because we were here to see. Others took comfort in the idea of connection. For centuries, philosophers have wondered if we are alone. 3.1 Atlas did not answer that question, but it stirred it awake. The object was silent, but its very foreignness suggested possibility. If fragments of other star systems can drift into ours, then the universe is not a collection of sealed boxes, but a web. Our solar system is not isolated, but porous, open to visitors. That realization carries a profound implication. If matter can travel, perhaps meaning, intelligence, or life itself can travel too. Suddenly, loneliness in the cosmos feels less absolute. There is also the question of chance. Was it pure coincidence that 3IATLA has intersected our path? Or does its arrival remind us that the universe is a place of constant interaction, of hidden forces weaving unseen patterns? Human beings long for meaning, for a sense that events carry intention. Perhaps that is why so many reached for myth, for symbolism, for stories of omens. The object became a screen upon which we projected our yearning for order in the chaos. But even if it was only chance, is that not wonder enough? To be brushed by a fragment of the unknown is to remember that the cosmos is alive with motion, indifferent yet magnificent. The existential weight of the encounter also revealed something about time. In our daily lives, we measure time in minutes, deadlines, seasons. But 3IATLAS reminded us that the universe runs on scales we can barely grasp: millions of years, billions of miles. When we place our lives against that canvas, we are invited to see differently. Our anxieties shrink. Our appreciation grows. To watch a streak of light across the sky and know it has traveled farther than we can imagine is to feel both insignificant and sacred in the same breath. Perhaps most of all, 3IATLA has reminded us of our hunger for story. We cannot simply say, "A rock passed by," we must ask, what does it mean? That instinct is not weakness, it is humanity's strength. Our search for meaning is what binds us, what drives art, science, philosophy. In the presence of the mysterious, we grow. Even in the absence of answers, the asking itself enriches us. The visitor came and went, but in its wake it left a trail of questions that glimmer like stars. And so, as the object disappeared into the black Brit sky, we were left with something paradoxically greater: the realization that the unknown is not empty, but full of possibility, full of reflection, full of the endless chance to rediscover ourselves through the mirror of the cosmos. 3.1 Atlas may have been silent, but in that silence, it spoke. It reminded us that our existence is fragile, fleeting, but also luminous, and sometimes, that is enough. When the first wave of fascination, speculation, and cultural storytelling about 3IATLAS began to quiet down, What remained was the steady hum of science. The headlines faded, the conspiracy forums turned their attention to the next mystery, and the late-night documentaries made room for newer content. But for astronomers, astrophysicists, and engineers, the story was only just beginning. In observatories around the world, researchers kept combing through the data. Telescopes had captured every possible sliver of light reflected from the interstellar traveler. And now those fragments became the raw material for years of analysis. They dissected the faint signatures, searching for patterns in the way sunlight bounced off the object, trying to infer whether its surface was metallic, rocky, icy, or something that did not quite fit into any known category. One of the enduring puzzles was the motion of 3I Atlas itself. Like its predecessor, Oumuamua, it did not follow a purely predictable gravitational path. Instead, it exhibited subtle deviations, tiny accelerations that could not be explained by gravity alone. Some suggested that outgassing jets of vaporized ice escaping into space might be responsible. But others countered, if that were the case, why was there no visible comet-like tail? Why was the behavior so inconsistent with the bodies humanity had cataloged for centuries? These questions became the bedrock of new research programs. Papers circulated through academic journals, each proposing models more sophisticated than the last. Some described exotic shapes, suggesting that the elongated geometry of the object itself might produce unusual dynamics as it tumbled through sunlight. Others pointed toward low-density materials, perhaps a porous structure like cosmic foam that could be pushed in ways ordinary rock never could. A few even entertained ideas on the fringe. But it was a light sail, perhaps a fragment of technology propelled by radiation pressure, gliding silently across interstellar space. For every bold hypothesis, there were critics ready to sharpen their arguments. That was the rhythm of science, not a single revelation, but a long dialogue across years, each paper a voice in the conversation. Graduate students built simulations that ran for weeks on university supercomputers. Postdoctoral fellows stayed up late, adjusting models, looking for consistency. Senior scientists revisited old assumptions, asking whether the physics of small bodies might still hold surprises waiting to be uncovered. In this slow, meticulous work, 3I Atlas became less of a mystery to be solved and more of a compass pointing the way forward. Its very strangeness suggested that the universe might be richer in forms than we had imagined. If one interstellar visitor had appeared, then surely more would follow. And if more would follow, the scientific community needed to be ready. So plans emerged not for another round of speculation, but for preparation. Astronomers began pushing for more sensitive sky surveys, arguing that only by widening humanity's net could we hope to catch the next traveler earlier. Engineers debated the feasibility of rapid-response probezimal spacecraft that could be launched within months, intercepting such objects while they were still within reach. Think tanks and space agencies quietly drew up roadmaps, calculating costs, timelines, and technologies needed to turn fleeting mysteries into tangible missions. Meanwhile, the existing data kept yielding subtler insights. Spectral analysis hinted at compounds that were neither purely metallic nor purely icy, suggesting a hybrid nature. The tumbling of the object revealed rhythms that some likened to a dance. Chaotic yet consistent enough to hint at internal structure. Each revelation sparked another set of questions, and each question pushed humanity further from certainty and closer to wonder. And all the while, beyond the spreadsheets and graphs, there lingered the emotional resonance of the event. Scientists who had devoted their lives to studying comets and asteroids found themselves speaking in more poetic terms. They described 3I Atlas as a messenger, a reminder that the cosmos was not static but alive, with travelers crossing distances beyond comprehension. Some admitted, half-jokingly, that even if all the data could be explained by natural means, they preferred to leave a little room for mystery, because mystery is what keeps the night sky worth watching. In the aftermath of 3I Atlas's departure, humanity learned not just about an object, but about its own hunger for meaning. The scientific aftermath was not about closing the book. It was about opening new ones, preparing for future encounters, shaping technologies, and cultivating the patience to wait for the next whisper from the stars. As months turned into years, the legacy of 3I Atlas evolved from a fleeting event into a foundation for long-term exploration. Scientific communities across continents began weaving the lessons of this visitor into broader narratives about space, technology, and humanity's future. What once seemed like an anomaly slowly became a catalyst, sparking conversations that would outlast the news cycle. Perhaps the most significant shift was the rise of global collaboration. Research consortia spanning the Americas, Europe, and Asia pooled their resources to examine the phenomenon from every possible angle. Astronomers in Chile coordinated with radio observatories in Hawaii. Space agencies shared data more freely than ever before, motivated by the realization that no single nation could own the sky. Each fragment of information became part of a collective puzzle, stitched together by thousands of minds across the planet. From these efforts, new instruments were proposed. Imagine telescopes designed not only to peer deeper into the cosmos, but to monitor the space around our solar system in near real time. Engineers envisioned networks of automated survey stations, their wide-angle eyes constantly scanning, ready to alert when the next interstellar wanderer crossed the threshold. No longer would such a visitor slip by unnoticed for years before discovery. Humanity aspired to see it coming, to be ready. At the same time, the idea of a rapid response mission gained momentum. Scientists asked, if we had known about 3I Atlas just a few years earlier, could we have sent a spacecraft to meet it? The answer was yes, but only if the world had acted quickly, decisively, and with technologies already in place. So aerospace companies began drafting blueprints for compact probes, agile and inexpensive, designed to launch within months rather than decades. They imagined swarms of these machines waiting in orbit, ready to pursue an interstellar target whenever the opportunity arose. Funding bodies took notice. What once sounded like science fiction now appeared as a strategic necessity. Governments recognized that studying such visitors was not just about satisfying curiosity, it was about defense, preparation, and long-term survival. After all, if a harmless rock could provoke so much mystery, what would humanity do if one day the visitor was not harmless at all? Theoretical research also bloomed. Papers explored the possibility that interstellar objects might be far more common than previously believed, drifting silently through the Milky Way by the billions. Some models suggested that planetary systems like our own regularly shed fragments, ejecting them into the void. If that was true, then 3I Atlas was not rare, it was simply the first that humanity had noticed. The implication was staggering. The galaxy might be filled with countless emissaries from distant worlds, each carrying a fragment of its home system's history. And so, a new field began to crystallize: interstellar object studies. Graduate programs emerged, conferences dedicated entire sessions to the topic, and journals published special editions filled with papers that tried to answer the most pressing questions. What kinds of materials survive the journey across interstellar space? How do such objects interact with radiation and magnetic fields? Could some of them carry the building blocks of life, seeded across the galaxy by chance or by design? The excitement even reached into philosophy and ethics. Some thinkers argued that if we ever intercepted such an object and discovered evidence of artificial design, humanity would face a moral crossroads. Should we attempt communication? Should we disturb it or leave it untouched as a relic of a civilization that may no longer exist? The questions blended science with values, pushing researchers to consider not only what could be done, but what should be done. And quietly, in the background, artists, writers, and musicians kept drawing inspiration from the event. Novels were penned about explorers chasing interstellar visitors. Films imagined the drama of first contact. Symphonies echoed the vast, silent journey of a rock drifting for millions of years before brushing past Earth. These cultural echoes served as reminders that science and imagination were not rivals, but partners in a shared human story. By the time the decade closed, 3I Atlas had long since vanished into the darkness, never to be seen again. Yet its shadow remained on the blueprints of telescopes, on the plans for spacecraft, on the pages of research papers, and in the dreams of those who looked upward at night. It had come and gone without incident, yet it changed the way humanity thought about its place in the universe. The scientific aftermath of 3I Atlas was not defined by final answers, but by new beginnings. The object reminded us that the cosmos is alive with movement, with strangers passing by, with mysteries waiting to be discovered. And though we may never touch that particular traveler again, it left behind something more valuable: the determination to be ready for the next one, and the recognition that the unknown is not an obstacle, but an invitation. The departure of 3I Atlas left a silence, but not an emptiness. For scientists, policymakers, and visionaries, the event had opened a door that could not be closed again. It was no longer a question of if another interstellar visitor would appear, but when. The cosmos had revealed that our solar system is not isolated, but part of a vast interstellar highway, with travelers passing through at unpredictable intervals. Humanity now faced a profound responsibility. To prepare, the first layer of preparation was observation. After all, discovery begins with awareness. Projects like the Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile, with its wide-field survey telescope, were no longer just academic pursuits. They became humanity's watchtowers, scanning the heavens for faint, fast-moving points of light. Software algorithms grew more sophisticated, capable of distinguishing between local asteroids, distant comets, and the rare objects that originated far beyond. Each upgrade meant earlier detection, more lead time, more opportunities to respond. But preparation was not only about seeing, it was about reaching. Space agencies began to debate seriously the logistics of interception missions: tiny spacecraft designed to launch quickly, adjust course with agility, and catch up to visitors before they escaped. Unlike the monumental decades-long projects of traditional space exploration, these missions would need to be rapid, flexible, and economical. They had to be waiting in the wings, ready to go at a moment's notice. This shift in mindset was profound. It was as though humanity was admitting that the cosmos would not adjust to our schedules, we must adjust to its. The timelines of interstellar objects are not measured in decades of planning, but in weeks and months. If we wish to study them closely, we must learn to move at their speed. Beyond the technical, there was the human dimension. The arrival of 3I Atlas had shown how quickly public imagination could be inflamed, and how swiftly misinformation could spread. Preparing for future visitors also meant preparing society to communicate clearly, to balance caution with wonder, and to ensure that curiosity did not dissolve into fear. Scientists, journalists, and educators all had roles to play. The lessons of past confusion were not to be forgotten. They were to be integrated into better strategies for the future. Then came the more philosophical preparation. If one day a visitor revealed clear signs of artificial origin, what would humanity do? Would we attempt to signal back, to leave a message, to chase after it into the void? Or would we treat it as an artifact, to be studied quietly and respectfully, without presuming to alter its course? Preparing for the unknown meant preparing our values, not only our instruments. The very act of imagining these scenarios pushed society to articulate what it meant to be human in the face of the cosmic other. In boardrooms, lecture halls, and even living rooms, the discussion grew. Preparing for interstellar visitors was not just about technology or science. It was about imagination, diplomacy, philosophy, and the collective spirit of a species that had only just begun to find its voice among the stars. And so, the departure of 3I Atlas did not close the story. It opened a new chapter, one in which humanity acknowledged that it lives in an open system, part of a greater community of cosmic travelers. To prepare was not simply to wait, it was to act, to plan, and to dream. The next visitor may already be on its way, racing silently through the interstellar dark, unseen for now. If the first steps of preparation involved telescopes and rapid-response spacecraft, the next layer was more ambitious, building a framework of readiness that extended across generations. For the truth is, interstellar visitors do not arrive on human schedules. They move to the rhythm of galactic time, where centuries can pass between events, or where two visitors might appear within a decade. To prepare for them was to embrace patience, continuity, and vision. One idea that began to circulate was the establishment of permanent watch stations, not just observatories, but entire institutions dedicated solely to tracking interstellar objects. These would not fade with political cycles or shifting budgets. Instead, they would be enduring projects, like lighthouses along the cosmic shore, keeping their beacons lit for centuries. Such stations would ensure that when the next visitor came, humanity would not be caught unaware. Alongside these practical plans came daring dreams. What if, instead of waiting for interstellar travelers to pass us by, we sought them out? Some scientists proposed missions beyond the heliosphere, deep into interstellar space, where probes could patrol the galactic highway directly. These probes, powered by advanced propulsion systems, might become humanity's first ambassadors, meeting travelers far from home. Such ideas were ambitious, even audacious, but they reflected a shift in mindset. No longer were we passive observers, but potential participants in the grand traffic of the cosmos. Education became another pillar of preparation. Universities developed new courses on interstellar science, blending astronomy, engineering, and astrobiology into interdisciplinary programs. Students learned not only how to calculate orbital dynamics, but how to think about life, intelligence, and communication in a galactic context. The next generation of scientists was being raised not just to look inward, at Earth, but outward, at the endless expanse of possibilities. But preparation was not only for the experts. Ordinary citizens also played a role. Amateur astronomers, once seen as hobbyists, became part of global networks, their backyard telescopes contributing valuable data. Citizen science platforms allowed people everywhere to participate, scanning digital sky surveys for faint anomalies, helping professionals cast a wider net. In this way, preparing for future visitors became a collective effort, shared not just among nations, but among individuals scattered across the globe. There was, of course, the lingering question of defense. Though most scientists stressed that visitors like 3I Atlas posed no threat, the possibility of hazardous interstellar objects could not be ignored. Agencies that once focused solely on asteroid deflection began to model scenarios involving high-velocity bodies from beyond the solar system. Could they be diverted? Could they be neutralized? Or would humanity have to adapt to the reality that some cosmic events cannot be controlled, only endured? Preparing meant facing not only inspiring possibilities, but sobering realities. And beneath all the calculations, all the strategies, lay a more intimate preparation, the readiness of the human heart. To see an object from another star system is to be reminded of our smallness, but also of our belonging to something vast. It challenges us to expand our perspective, to let go of the illusion of permanence, and to accept that the universe is alive with motion and surprise. Preparing for future visitors was, in the deepest sense, preparing to meet ourselves, our fears, our hopes, our capacity to wonder. In the end, the legacy of 3 IATLAs was not a single dataset or a stack of research papers. It was a shift in consciousness. It taught humanity that the universe is not silent, but filled with travelers. That we are not isolated, but part of a wider galactic story, and that to prepare for the future is not only to build better telescopes or faster spacecraft, but to cultivate patience, resilience, and imagination. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of our instruments, another traveler may already be approaching. It might be a shard of rock, a drifting fragment of ice, or something we cannot yet imagine. When it comes, will we be ready? That is the question that 3i Atlas left us with, a question that echoes through observatories, classrooms, and dreams alike. And perhaps that is the essence of preparation, not certainty, but readiness. Not control, but openness. To look into the night sky with the quiet understanding that one day, the stars will send another messenger, and we, in our fragile yet determined way, will be waiting. When humanity first caught sight of 3 IATLAS, the response was largely practical: observe, analyze, prepare. But as the years passed and the memory of that strange interstellar visitor grew softer, deeper questions began to surface. They were not about orbits or propulsion, not about telescopes or spacecraft, but about values. What should humanity do if confronted with undeniable signs that an object was not natural, but artificial? What responsibilities would come with that knowledge? At the heart of these questions lay an ethical dilemma: ownership. If a visitor from beyond the stars entered our solar system, could any nation, corporation, or individual claim rights over it? Would it belong to humanity as a whole, or would it become the prize of those who reached it first? In a world already divided by competition for resources, the possibility of an alien artifact threatened to ignite new rivalries. To prepare ethically meant addressing these tensions before they escalated. Then there was the matter of interference. Suppose scientists did discover that an object was artificial, perhaps a probe, perhaps a relic of a long-gone civilization. Should humanity attempt to study it up close, even dismantle it, to unlock its secrets? Or should it remain untouched, respected as a cultural treasure of another world? The debate echoed old arguments about archaeological sites on Earth. Do we have the right to disturb what we do not fully understand? Another dilemma concerned communication. If an object showed evidence of being designed, should humanity attempt to respond? Would it be reckless to send signals into the void, revealing our presence to unknown beings? Or would silence be a betrayal of curiosity, a refusal to acknowledge the possibility of connection? Philosophers argued that to remain silent was to deny our nature as storytellers and seekers. But others warned that contact without caution could expose us to risks beyond imagination. Even if the object itself remained mute, its mere existence would reshape how we think about ourselves. Religions would wrestle with the implications. Did the arrival of such an artifact confirm divine creation, or did it challenge sacred narratives? Political leaders would grapple with legitimacy. Who speaks for Earth in the face of something greater than any one nation? Ordinary people would confront existential questions. If intelligence has flourished elsewhere, what does that mean for our place in the universe? The dilemmas extended beyond humanity's relationship with the object itself. They touched on the ways we treat one another. Preparing for interstellar visitors forced us to reflect on our own divisions, our conflicts, our inequities, our fragile alliances. If we cannot act as one species on Earth, how can we hope to act as one in the cosmos? The object became a mirror, showing us not only the mystery of the other, but the unfinished work of ourselves. And there was one final question, perhaps the most haunting. What if we discovered not life, but death? An interstellar artifact might not be a messenger of progress, but a tombstone, evidence of a civilization that once was, and is no more. Would we dare to study such a relic, knowing it might reveal not how to thrive, but how to fall? Would we treat it as a warning, a lesson written in silence across light years, urging us to avoid the same fate? In these ethical and philosophical dilemmas, the story of 3i ATLAS took on a new dimension. It was no longer simply a question of what we could do, but of what we should do. And in that distinction lay the true test of our maturity as a species. As the debate deepened, people realized that ethical questions about 3i ATLAS were not distant or abstract. They were mirrors held up to our everyday lives. The choices we imagined making in response to a visitor from the stars were the same choices we struggled with here on Earth. Exploitation versus stewardship, curiosity versus caution, division versus unity. The object's mystery did not invent these dilemmas, it illuminated them, sharpening their edges until they could no longer be ignored. One dilemma often raised was the balance between science and restraint. Throughout history, the human urge to know has driven us forward. We've cracked open the atom, mapped the genome, and landed on the moon. Yet knowledge has not always brought wisdom. The same discoveries that healed also harmed. The same technologies that empowered also destroyed. Would our thirst to unlock the secrets of an interstellar object lead us to wisdom or to folly? If the object held advanced technology, should we use it? Could we resist using it? These questions lingered like shadows behind the glow of curiosity. Another thread of thought asked whether humanity was ready to confront the humility such a discovery demanded. To recognize an artifact of intelligence, far older, far more advanced than ours, would be to admit that we are not the first, not the greatest, not the only. That recognition could humble us into cooperation or fracture us into fear. Philosophers reminded us that arrogance has always been our downfall, and that perhaps the greatest ethical preparation was not in building spacecraft or telescopes, but in cultivating humility. There was also the moral weight of preservation. Imagine if 3i Atlas was fragile, carrying with it traces of another world's culture, language, or art. How should humanity approach such a relic? Would it be stored in museums, guarded by institutions, or shared openly with all? Could we trust our systems of ownership to safeguard something meant to belong to all of humankind? History offers a troubling precedent. Treasures of ancient civilizations have too often been stolen, hidden, or destroyed. Would we repeat those mistakes on a cosmic scale? Ethics also forced us to look inward at our collective responsibility. The arrival of an interstellar artifact would not belong to scientists alone, nor to governments, nor to corporations. It would belong to everyone, to farmers and poets, to children yet unborn, to all who share this fragile planet. Decisions about how to engage with it could not be left in the hands of the few, no matter how skilled or powerful. Democracy, transparency, and shared voices would be necessary. Otherwise, the discovery would not unite us, but divide us further. And perhaps the most difficult dilemma of all was one of meaning. If an alien object truly was before us, it would force us to ask, what is humanity's purpose in the cosmos? Are we explorers, destined to reach out and connect? Or are we caretakers, meant to protect the fragile spark of life we have here on Earth? Should we measure success by how far we travel, or by how deeply we care for one another? The ethical questions of 3i Atlas were ultimately questions of identity. In seeking to understand the visitor, we sought to understand ourselves. Night after night, thinkers, leaders, and ordinary dreamers turned these questions over in their minds. There were no easy answers, no perfect resolutions. But the act of asking them changed us. For once, we were invited to imagine a future shaped not by necessity or survival, but by choice, by the conscious shaping of who we wish to be. And so, in the quiet after 3i Atlas's passing, humanity found itself standing before a crossroads. One path led to old habits, rivalry, greed, haste. The other path led to something more fragile but more hopeful, humility, responsibility, wonder. Which path we choose may not only define our response to the stars, but our survival on Earth. In the end, the true dilemma was not about the object itself, but about us. The universe had whispered a question through the silent passage of 3i Atlas, and the only voices that could answer were our own. When 3i Atlas slipped through our solar system, it left behind no debris, no trail of fire, no permanent scar. Yet in another sense, it left traces everywhere. The object ignited imaginations far beyond the realm of science. Artists, writers, musicians, and storytellers began to weave its mystery into the fabric of culture. What telescopes could not capture, the human mind supplied, painting the silence of space with colors, melodies, and metaphors. In literature, 3i Atlas became a symbol of the unknown, knocking gently at our door. Novelists sketched entire civilizations around it, imagining it as a probe, a ship, even a fragment of an alien cathedral adrift in the void. Poets found in its trajectory a reflection of human longing, the way we wander, alone and yet searching, across the dark ocean of existence. Some compared it to a comet of destiny, a messenger sent not to deliver answers but to remind us that questions still burn within us. Artists took to canvas and screen, painting visions of the object as if it were a relic of myth. Some imagined it smooth and metallic, like a crafted vessel, while others portrayed it jagged and primeval, as though torn from the bones of a forgotten world. In digital galleries, countless interpretations circulated, each one not so much a depiction of 3i Atlas itself, but of the human soul gazing into the unknown. Music, too, found inspiration. Composers wrote symphonies that rose and fell like the imagined heartbeat of a wandering star. Ambient musicians released albums of slow, meditative tones designed to mimic the rhythm of an interstellar drift, inviting listeners to feel as though they were floating alongside the object in silence. Even popular songs picked up the theme, using 3i Atlas as a metaphor for fleeting love, for the strangeness of encounter, for the bittersweet beauty of things that pass by only once. Film and television could not resist either. Science fiction writers saw, in the interstellar visitor, a perfect catalyst for stories of first contact, of human resilience, of cosmic wonder. Documentaries reimagined the object as a character in its own right, a silent witness to the unfolding story of Earth. Animation studios created dreamlike shorts where children befriended a glowing shard of 3i Atlas, turning it into a lantern that lit their way through the darkness. The cultural reflections did more than entertain. They shaped how people thought about the object itself. For many who had never read a scientific paper or studied orbital mechanics, their understanding of 3i Atlas came not from astronomy, but from art, through metaphor and symbol. The mystery reached wider audiences, becoming part of everyday conversations, bedtime stories, and shared myths. This pattern was not new. Humanity has always met the unknown with imagination. When ancient peoples saw comets blazing across the sky, they told stories of omens, gods, and fates. When explorers first crossed uncharted oceans, artists painted maps filled with sea monsters, blending reality with fear and hope. 3i Atlas fit naturally into this tradition. It was our modern sea monster, our cosmic omen, empty canvas onto which we projected our collective hopes and anxieties. Yet there was something uniquely modern about the way this cultural wave spread. In an age of instant communication, a painting inspired by 3i Atlas in one country could be shared worldwide within minutes. A short poem written in solitude could resonate with thousands across the globe. The visitor became not just a muse for individual artists, but a shared cultural phenomenon that transcended borders, languages, and traditions. And while science sought precision, art embraced ambiguity. Astronomers debated whether 3i Atlas was a comet, an asteroid, or something stranger, but artists reveled in the uncertainty, turning the unknown into a fertile ground for creativity. In a sense, the less we knew, the more we could imagine. The absence of answers became a gift. For some, 3i Atlas inspired spiritual art. Painters depicted it as a divine messenger, a starborn angel drifting past Earth to remind humanity of its smallness and its promise. Poets wrote of it as a cosmic pilgrim, wandering in eternal search of meaning. In these works, the object was not merely matter, but metaphora, symbol of the soul's journey through the vastness of existence. And perhaps that was its greatest cultural legacy. It reminded us of the power of wonder. In a world crowded with noise, deadlines, and distractions, the silent passage of an interstellar stranger gave us permission to pause, to dream, to create. It proved that even in an age of data and algorithms, mystery still has a place. Long after the object itself had vanished into the dark, its echo remained in galleries, libraries, playlists, and dreams. Children grew up reading bedtime stories about it, not as a technical anomaly, but as a cosmic fairy tale. Artists continued to reinterpret it, decades later, each generation finding new metaphors in its silence. 3i Atlas may have been just a stone or a shard of ice drifting between stars, but in the hands of humanity, it became a lantern of imagination, an enduring reminder that sometimes the most powerful discoveries are not the ones we can measure, but the ones we can dream. From the moment astronomers announced the arrival of 3i Atlas, the media sensed a story too good to resist. Headlines stretched across newspapers and digital feeds, framing the mysterious interstellar visitor as a riddle poised to capture global imagination. Some reports emphasized the scientific significance of an object from beyond our solar system, only the third of its kind ever detected. Others chose a more dramatic angle, calling it a cosmic intruder or messenger from the stars. Television anchors spoke of it in hushed tones, as if recounting a ghost story. Documentaries sprang up within weeks, blending expert interviews with dramatic visuals of a dark, elongated body gliding silently past Earth. Every image released by observatories was replayed, zoomed in, and reinterpreted, each pixel scrutinized for signs of design or intention. But media, as always, did more than inform. It amplified emotions. In the public sphere, the object became more than a scientific curiosity. It became a character in an unfolding drama. People who might never have cared about astronomy suddenly found themselves following updates about its trajectory. Social media trended with hashtags that turned 3i Atlas into a household name. Some posts were playful, imagining the object as a wandering traveler looking for friends. Others were apocalyptic, warning of hidden dangers and secret truths. Where fascination grows, conspiracy is never far behind. Almost immediately, online forums filled with speculation. Was 3i Atlas a probe sent to spy on Earth? Was it a disguised weapon, part of a cover-up orchestrated by powerful nations? Some insisted that its unusual speed and shape were proof of alien engineering, while others claimed governments already knew its purpose and were withholding the truth. YouTube channels flourished, producing videos with titles like "What NASA Isn't Telling You" and "The Alien Artifact in Our Sky." Some of these videos reached millions of views, not because they offered evidence, but because they offered excitement, the thrill of mystery, the suggestion that ordinary people were uncovering secrets hidden by elites. Meanwhile, more grounded voices tried to steady the conversation. Scientists patiently explained orbital mechanics, probabilities, and natural origins. They pointed out that unusual shapes and trajectories did not necessarily mean artificial construction, yet their explanations often struggled to compete with the allure of conspiracy. Facts were precise but quiet. Speculation was loud, emotional, and endlessly shareable. This tension was not new. Every great cosmic mystery in human history had sparked a similar divide. When comets blazed across medieval skies, scholars saw natural phenomena, while crowds saw omens of war or famine. When the first radio signals were broadcast into space, some dreamed of replies from distant civilizations. 318TLAS inherited this same duality. It was at once a scientific puzzle and a canvas for human imagination. Public fascination sometimes spilled into action. Amateur astronomers bought new telescopes, hoping for a glimpse of the object themselves. Writers penned essays about what its passage meant for humanity's future. Artists released digital renderings that spread online faster than the object itself moved across the heavens. In living rooms and classrooms, people debated whether it was wise to ignore, or whether humanity should be preparing for something extraordinary. Conspiracies, however, had their darker edges. Some groups claimed 3I Atlas was tied to religious prophecies, heralding the end of days. Others insisted it was part of secret projects like Project Bluebeam, alleging that world governments would use its appearance to stage a false alien invasion. These theories, though often dismissed by experts, gained traction in corners of the internet where distrust of authority ran deep. What made these conspiracies powerful was not their accuracy, but their emotional resonance. They offered simple stories in a complex world. They suggested that hidden forces controlled reality, and that those who believed were insiders who knew the truth. In uncertain times, such narratives were comforting, even when frightening. And yet, beneath the noise of speculation, something more profound was happening. The sheer volume of attention revealed how hungry humanity was for wonder. Whether through headlines, tweets, or whispered theories, people wanted the cosmos to matter to their daily lives. They wanted to feel connected to something vast and mysterious, to sense that their small lives were part of a greater story. In the end, the media frenzy and the swirl of conspiracies were not distractions from the meaning of 3I Atlas. They were part of its meaning. The visitor was not just a piece of rock and ice, it was a mirror reflecting human hopes, fears, and the endless struggle between truth and story. For scientists, 3I Atlas was a rare data point. For artists, it was a muse. For journalists, it was a headline. For conspiracists, it was a secret. But for humanity as a whole, it was something greater still. A reminder that mystery still exists, and that even in an age of constant information, the unknown can still sweep across our skies and capture every imagination. Long after it vanished into darkness, the debates continued. Some insisted it had been natural all along. Others remained convinced it was an artifact. But perhaps the truth mattered less than the conversations it sparked. Because in talking about 3I Atlas, we were also talking about ourselves, our trust and our doubt, our longing and our fear, our fragile balance between knowledge and belief. The night sky has always been a stage where humanity projects its dreams. With 3I Atlas, those dreams took on a sharper edge, because for the first time we did not have to imagine the possibility of interstellar visitors, they were real. Even if the object was nothing more than ice and rock, its journey across our system planted seeds of speculation that have yet to stop growing. One scenario often whispered among scientists and storytellers alike is simple repetition. What if more objects like 3I Atlas appear, not once every century, but every few years, perhaps even annually? A steady stream of interstellar debris, probes, or relics drifting through the solar system would transform astronomy into a discipline not of distant stars, but of close encounters. Each new arrival would bring fresh questions, fresh data, fresh stories. Humanity would no longer ask if the stars could reach us, but when next, some dream of building technologies to meet these travelers head-on. Proposals for rapid response spacecraft already circulate in theoretical papers. Small, nimble probes that could launch within weeks of detection, intercepting interstellar visitors before they vanish again into the dark. To some, this is not just science, but destiny, the idea that humanity should become a welcoming committee, greeting each cosmic wanderer with open instruments and curious eyes. Yet there are other, more daring scenarios. What if the next visitor does not merely drift by, but slows down? What if it changes course, behaving less like a rock and more like a ship? Such a moment would shake the foundations of every institution on Earth. Governments would scramble, religions would reframe doctrines, and ordinary people would look up at the sky with a mixture of terror and awe. Preparing for that possibility requires more than technology, it requires maturity. There are also darker visions. Some speculate that interstellar objects might carry dangerous microbes, radiation, or even signals designed not to enlighten but to deceive. The idea of a Trojan horse from the stars may sound like science fiction, but to thinkers cautious about survival, it is a scenario worth imagining. What safeguards would we need? Would we treat such objects as gifts, or as Pandora's boxes, best left unopened. In more hopeful futures, 3IATLAS is seen not as a threat, but as a bridge. Imagine a world where its passage inspires a global renaissance of cooperation. Nations set aside rivalries to invest in space exploration, driven by the shared desire to be ready for the next visitor. Humanity grows more unified, not less, under the gaze of the stars. Out of this unity might come colonies on the moon, cities on Mars, and, eventually, our own ships crossing interstellar distances, not as wanderers lost in the dark, but as explorers following the faint paths left by others. For dreamers, the ultimate scenario is contact. They imagine one day intercepting an object that carries a message, encoded in symbols we slowly learn to decipher. A greeting, perhaps, or a warning. A record of another civilization's existence. Even a simple "we were here" would transform how we see ourselves, answering one of the oldest questions humanity has asked: are we alone? But speculative futures are not predictions. They are reflections of our present hopes and fears. When we imagine 3IATLAS as a harbinger of doom, we reveal our anxieties about climate change, war, and extinction. When we imagine it as a beacon of connection, we reveal our longing for unity and belonging. The object is both real and metaphorical, a mirror in motion, carrying not only cosmic mystery but also the unfinished story of ourselves. In the centuries to come, long after 3I Atlas itself has passed beyond the reach of our instruments, its legacy may lie in the futures it inspired us to imagine. Futures where humanity becomes a cosmic species. Futures where we learn humility from the silence of the stars. Futures where, in dreaming of others, we finally come to understand ourselves. And perhaps that is the greatest speculative scenario of all, that the true gift of 3I Atlas was not data, not discovery, but imagination. It reminded us that the universe is not finished, that history is still being written in the stars, and that we are invited to take part in it. When 3IATLAS slipped into history, it left behind no fragments for us to study, no samples neatly preserved in a lab. What it left instead was a trail of influence ripples across science, technology, and the imagination of those who studied it. Like a stone skipped across the surface of a pond, the visitor's presence was brief, but the waves it stirred will continue to move outward for generations. The most immediate legacy was observational. Before 3I Atlas, telescopes were tuned toward predictable phenomena: planets, comets, asteroids, the well-behaved citizens of our solar system. Afterward, astronomers realized they had to look harder, faster, and wider. Survey projects expanded, developing sharper algorithms and faster networks to spot faint objects moving against the stars. Entire sky monitoring systems were upgraded not because 3I Atlas was dangerous, but because it proved the galaxy is alive with wanderers, and we must be ready to greet them. This shift brought new technology. Advances in machine learning, adaptive optics, and rapid response observation pipelines were funded and developed. Observatories once thought adequate suddenly seemed to narrow in scope, to slow in reaction time. The dream became not only to detect the next visitor, but to track it in exquisite detail before it slipped away. Out of necessity, astronomy grew more agile, less reactive, more proactive. Beyond observation came theory. 3.1 forced scientists to rethink what was possible. How many such objects drift through interstellar space? How many cross our solar system without notice? What do their shapes, speeds, and trajectories reveal about the birth of other star systems? Papers multiplied, conferences buzzed, and entire careers were reshaped around the study of interstellar debris. Two young students of astronomy, it became a symbol of a frontier, not in galaxies far away, but right here, within reach of a telescope and a restless mind. Its impact spread to planetary defense as well. While 3IATLAS was never on a collision course with Earth, its passage reminded us that the sky is not empty. The possibility of objects natural or artificial arriving unannounced from beyond our system re-energized discussions about preparedness. Scientists and policymakers debated rapid launch missions, interception strategies, and international cooperation. The question was no longer just how to defend against near-Earth asteroids, but how to respond to the unknown. Perhaps the most enduring legacy, however, was psychological. 3.1 broadened humanity's perspective of what counts as local. Our solar system had long been the familiar stage on which we placed all celestial events. Suddenly, here was a traveler from another star, proof that the boundaries of our story were wider than we had imagined. It changed the scale of our imagination. Children growing up in classrooms where teachers spoke of 3I Atlas no longer saw the solar system as an isolated island, but as one harbor in a vast ocean of worlds. The object also pushed philosophy of science into the public arena. Was it ethical to speculate about artificial origins without proof? Was caution preferable to curiosity? How should scientists balance skepticism with openness? These debates did not end with 3IATLAS, they deepened, preparing the next generation of researchers to handle mysteries with humility and rigor. Even fields far beyond astronomy felt the ripple. Engineers borrowed its mystery to inspire new propulsion studies. Biologists speculated about panspermia, wondering if interstellar travelers could scatter the seeds of life. Anthropologists used it as a case study for how societies react to the unknown, comparing it to ancient encounters with comets, eclipses, or explorers from distant lands. In this way, the legacy of 3IATLAs became interdisciplinary, uniting science with the humanities. Over decades, as the memory of its passage faded into textbooks, the true long-term impact emerged. Culture and science intertwined. Just as Halley's Comet inspired centuries of awe and investigation, so too did 3I Atlas leave its mark. Each future detection of an interstellar object would be measured against it. Each telescope proposal justified in part by the mystery it embodied. It became not just an event, but a reference point in humanity's unfolding dialogue with the cosmos. And perhaps this is the measure of its scientific legacy. Not answers, but momentum. 3IATLAs did not tell us where it came from or what it was. Instead, it compelled us to keep looking, to prepare better, to wonder more deeply. In doing so, it extended the horizon of science not by closing questions, but by opening them wider. The long-term impact is not only written in research papers, but in the quiet ways it reshaped the human spirit. It reminded us that discovery is not always neat or conclusive. Sometimes, discovery is simply being present when the unknown drifts past, and having the courage to ask what it means. In the end, what does it mean that a lonely traveler, 3I Atlas, passed through our solar system? It did not strike Earth, it did not stay long, and it left behind no fragments or trophies. Yet somehow, its fleeting presence carries weight, like a whisper that lingers long after the voice has faded. Perhaps the most profound meaning lies in humility. For centuries, humanity has gazed upward, mapping the heavens, naming the stars, charting the comets. We like to think of ourselves as the central storytellers of the cosmos. But 3IATLA has reminded us that the universe is older, larger, and more mysterious than we often admit. Here was an object formed around another sun, billions of years ago, carrying with it the fingerprints of a distant world we will never see. It traveled in silence across unimaginable distances, unnoticed until it brushed against the thin bubble of our awareness. Its passage humbled us, reminding us that we are not the only authors in this cosmic narrative. At the same time, it gifted us wonder. Wonder that a small, rocky shard of another system could cross our sky, tying us to a place we cannot yet reach. Wonder that our instruments, our science, and our curiosity were sharp enough to notice it. Wonder that in the vastness of the Milky Way, amidst billions of stars and countless planets, something foreign would wander so close, allowing us, however briefly, to look upon it and feel connected to the wider galaxy. It also meant connection, not just across space, but across time. Think of the generations who will read about 3I Atlas in classrooms, who will dream of seeing the next visitor. Think of the scientists who dedicated years to analyzing its orbit, the artists who painted its mystery, the children who asked whether it was a message from beyond. These connections weave a thread from our present moment into the future, ensuring that the visitor's legacy is not forgotten. In this way, 3IATLAs became less an object and more a story humanity tells about itself and its place among the stars. For some, its meaning was existential. If objects can drift freely between stars, might life itself travel this way? Might we, one day, become travelers like 3IATLAs, carrying fragments of Earth into the galaxy? The visitor turned a scientific observation into a meditation on destiny. Are we meant to remain tethered to this planet, or are we, too, seeds of interstellar journeys yet to come? And for others, its meaning was personal. Many who watched the news of its discovery did not think of orbital mechanics or cosmic dust. They thought of how small Earth seemed, how fragile, suspended in the same night sky that carried this stranger. In those quiet moments, gazing upward, people felt the same awe that ancient stargazers once felt when comets swept across their skies. 3IATLAs, for all its strangeness, placed us back into that timeless human experience. To look up, to wonder, to feel both small and infinite at once. So, what does it mean for humanity? Perhaps it means this. We are part of a living universe, not a static dome of stars, but a dynamic, wandering, restless place where worlds collide, scatter, and cross paths. Our solar system is not a closed island, it is a port, visited on rare occasions by travelers whose journeys remind us of the greater ocean we inhabit. To live with this knowledge is to live more fully aware of our place, not at the center, but as participants in a cosmic dance. And maybe the truest meaning is hope. Hope that the next visitor will teach us more. Hope that one day, we will not just watch passively, but reach out sending missions, collecting data, perhaps even learning secrets hidden in interstellar stone. Hope that our descendants will not only observe these travelers, but join them, carrying the light of Earth outward into the galaxy. 3IATLAs has already moved on, continuing its silent voyage. But for us, the encounter remains. It remains in the telescopes now built sharper, in the scientists now thinking bolder, in the hearts now dreaming larger. It remains in the story we will keep telling, that once in our lifetime, the universe reached in, tapped us gently on the shoulder, and reminded us that we are not alone, not isolated, not forgotten, but woven into a tapestry that stretches far beyond the edge of our sight. And as we drift toward sleep, letting these thoughts settle, perhaps the greatest meaning of all emerges. That to be human is to notice. To notice the stranger in the sky, to feel the tremor of curiosity, and to carry that spark forward. That is what 3i Atlas means for humanity. Not an accident, not just a rock, but a mirror held up to our own yearning. A reminder that we belong not just to Earth, but to the stars.